What's up, everybody? I figured, fuck it, I'll get started a little early. It's supposed to start at 1:30, or so it's scheduled. But I guess I don't really care that much. Let me spread this out so I can see what's going on here. Stream health looking good. Yeah, I don't want auto start. I will enable auto stop. DVR is fine. 360 videos, no. I have no closed captions. Capture moments. Oh, I can click from here? Sweet. Stream markers. Oh, cool. Okay. All right. Cool. There's a lot of new stuff here since the last time I did this. Unlist live replay once stream ends. Yeah, we'll do that. So can we, because we can do some stuff. I'll probably edit and release the stream. Get rid of a bunch of stuff. Hey, there's a Scully over there. Scully, Scully. But yeah, so hey everybody, welcome to Never Knows Best. As always, I'm your host Never. Just kind of chilling out, doing my thing here. Figured I would spend some time just like ranting on the internet about the stuff that I've been forcing everybody in my life to listen to me talk about lately. Unfortunately, you guys will have to deal with the fact that I do not currently have a camera. My camera is pretty much crapped out. It just won't read on my computer anymore. I just need to get a new one. But yeah, so Curtis is no more. He's gone the way of Carl. Stuart, I just don't know where that guy went. I think I gave him back. Anyways, we're gonna play a little Be A Landlord because it's easy and it's nice and it's chill, and I can focus on it without getting like too furious about the other stuff that's going on. But we're also gonna talk about politics today. I've been watching a lot of the Debate Bros and Political Tube and all that whatnot nonsense. So I have some opinions. I'm just gonna basically kind of troll around on YouTube. There are a couple of videos that I want to talk about. There's one in particular that I'm writing a video response to. And man, there is so much. Like I've got comments actually from I couldn't help myself and I started responding to this video, which kind of became the beginning of my script notes for it, and there have just been so many comments coming in response to it. But that'll be a video for later. That is a video on a guy named John Doyle, who I don't know. I think he's not a great guy, but that's my opinion. You know what I'm saying? In my opinion, John Doyle kind of sucks. So there we go. First hot take. First hot take of the stream. I'm gonna go ahead and switch over to my live screen here. We can get off my intro screen. It's like 1:22. It's close enough, right? Let me get rid of these comments. I'm not gonna respond to this right now. This looks pretty long. But yeah. Transition. Okay. Um so yeah, there's a little bit of that good old luck be a landlord. Oh, yeah, let me real quick. Let me see if I can actually hear me across the stream because I didn't actually set up a monitor of any sort. I normally do that. Your channel. Yes, it is live. All right, cool. Cool. I can actually hear it. Everything's working. It sounds pretty good. I feel like there should be a lot more background noise here because every time I take my headphones off, it sounds very loud in my vicinity. I've not got a really great studio space yet, but I do have a comfortable studio space, and I kind of like that. All right, so let me get rid of OBS because it's just going to sit there for now. I should be able to see my chat over here. Cool, cool. Okay, so I don't know, like RGR. I haven't gotten into that whole thing yet, so we're not gonna get into that one yet. But we could peek around on Vouch's channel. Sam Cedar, I've been really enjoying this. As you can see, like, so if you go a little further down, yeah, we got Watcher down here, Rowan Hayes. He's from 12 Foot Ninja. He's a great Australian band. Wisecrack, they pop up every now and then. Good use of the Fable Kid. Abdu Murray. I don't even know this guy yet. Here's that Johnny Doyle guy I was talking about. Why Beauty and the Beast is implicitly right wing. Okay, yeah, I did. I saw this one before. I feel like this was kind of a shit take. Could definitely, could definitely check that out. Leon Lush, he's kind of fun to watch. Watching him react to reactions would kind of be a little bit nuts, though. Because that's, I mean, he does sometimes he reacts to reactions, and if I were reacting to that, that's a little too meta for me. Bad, but yeah, you can say, okay, here we go. Modern day debate. We got Vouch down here. Vouch versus Sanvi. Oh, I heard about this one. This was just done. Oh, okay, okay. To be fair, as far as I am aware, I probably agree very strongly with Vouch on this one. Vouch, I don't, whatever, however you pronounce it. Um, I just started watching his videos recently. I saw him pop up a lot back in the day, but over the past couple of weeks, I've watched a lot of his content. Looking for stuff to respond to. It would be kind of cool to respond to one of his debates. It's 3 hours and change. So that's kind of a big time investment, but I might do it. And at some point, the Smoke Dragon, my business partner, is going to come over here. So we should have a chance actually to look into some stuff. There's got to be a better way. Okay, I can see my chat over here, but oh, man, I don't have my two screens set up anymore. I turned my fucking computer around, and my second monitor won't connect right now. And so I'm trying to do everything on one screen for the first time in like 3 years, and it's, man, it's frustrating. Okay, I can shrink most of this, and I can just leave the chat over here. That'll work for me. I don't really need to see the video because it's gonna be the two of them staring at their cameras talking. But here we go. Here we go. Turn that up. Their chat. I can leave their chat down here. Modern day, ad free, music free. Awesome. That is helpful. Although it does mean that I'm like, has it started yet?
Statement thing. Not.
Oh, there we go. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you there, bud.
Hey everybody, today we're debating whether or not trans men are men, and we are starting right now with Vosh's opening statement. Thanks so much for being with us, Vosh. The floor is all yours.
Hi, I'm Vosh. So when we talk about subjects like these, there's this irritating semantic inflation with a bunch of different definitions we tend to have of man, women, sex, gender. I feel like oftentimes these discussions are had in bad faith or at least out of ignorance. A lot of these discussions have been settled, for example, like for years now, the idea that sex and gender are distinct things to be discussed distinctly, even if these categories are related to each other. This has been established and brought up in like basically every field and format that these issues get talked about in. So we have to relitigate it time and time and time again, right? Well, are there differences between sex and gender? Yes, of course there are. Because we create the words and the terms, we create the ideas. If we believe that there are two distinct things to be referred to, then there are. That's how language works. You can distinguish words. That's the point of a language.
Okay, and I really dig that right there. That's pretty true as far as I'm concerned. Like, language is highly arbitrary. We make the rules behind everything. I get upset with people when they violate those rules, but there come times, even when I'm like, okay, well, I'm kind of resisting the change here. I don't really want to, you know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to deal with it like that. And there are just times when it's like, okay, well, enough people have switched over to this mode of speaking that I kind of just have to get used to it. When I was a lot younger, and it has a lot to do with like where I grew up and how I grew up, but calling somebody a bitch was just like, that's fighting words immediately. So I was like really hard line about like, you don't use that word unless you're trying to start a fight. Like if you want to get punched in the face, you go ahead and run that. But when it comes right down to it, none of that was really necessary. And as I got around other people that were a little bit more open about their stuff, give me a second. Sorry, like I said, lots of background noise, lots of crosstalk going on, but I don't want to like dox people or have their conversations broadcast on the internet without them knowing. So just muted there for a second. But like, yeah. So as I started hanging around people that were a little bit more free thinking, a little bit more into their own thing, like sometimes that word would get used, and I would get really, really upset and really heated about it. Like, yo, you're just trying to start a fight, but eventually I had to come over to the idea that like it's not always used with that sort of context. It's not always got that sort of that amount of vitriol and hatred behind it. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I mean that can be kind of hard sometimes to like to come to terms with. It can be kind of hard to like understand where other people are coming from if you believe something really strongly. But like, I think it's pretty important to try at least to figure that stuff out a little bit. I am shrinking the window there a little bit. Let me transition that in. Oh, I like how it like just cut it all off. I didn't quite get it correct on the top, but that was nifty. I like that. It made me happy. And one more time. Oh, erasure. Love it. Okay. Sorry, I'm having fun with my streaming software lately. I switched off of using Streamlabs because it was pissing me off, and we're at OBS now. So studio mode is my big thing. But yeah, so like he's definitely right. Like language is subjective and it can change over time, and even if that makes you uncomfortable, that doesn't change the fact that it's valid.
Languages become more useful the more specific their terms are, after all. And I think that an example of language being very unspecific, of language being very vague and useless, would be one in which the term woman, what does it mean to be a woman? What is a woman? What are categories or traits associated with woman? Is one which includes something as distinct, concrete, and biological as genitalia or gametes, but also something as ephemeral and socially influenced as long hair, sun hats, dresses, piercings, things that we absolutely culturally associate with women, but really have nothing to do with biology. We just arbitrarily decided those things look nice on women. And that's only now, you know? There have been plenty of times in the past that we've had different ideas in those particular subjects. So if language is to be useful, we have to acknowledge that we're talking about different things, sex and gender. Are trans men men? Well, I mean, it depends on what you mean by man. What category are you referring to? I've seen a lot of people try to define what specifically it means to be a man or a woman in biological terms. This fails quickly. Not because there's no worth to biological analysis, but because, again, that would be talking about sex. Obviously, we're playing different games here.
Yeah, okay, so I'm trying to break in repeatedly because like I'm not just trying to like play this video. I'm not just trying to just play their debate, and it's gonna take a lot more than 3 hours to get through it if I have to keep on breaking in. But like, yeah, so it's definitely one of those things where I mean he's still just going into the idea of like language becoming more useful over time, which I really appreciate that whole idea, the concept that it even can do that. Because there are some situations in which it feels like that's just not really the move. It feels like a lot of people are trying to hold people back with a lot of things. Hang on a second. Do I want to do the mac and cheese before the turkey goes in? Oh no. Shit, that's right. That turkey hasn't even gone in yet. It's 1:30. Um, do the turkey first because I can start preparing the mac first. I spelled that word wrong. There we go. All right. Yeah, guys, I am highly distracted. As you can tell, it's just a day. There's a lot going on. I'm glad I had my screen still on. But I sent a message to respond. Yeah, here, I'm gonna go back because I really did want to respond to what he was saying. But
If we're talking about what category are you referring to? Men? Well, I mean about different things, sex and gender. Are trans men men? Well, I mean, it depends on what you mean by man. What category are you referring to? I've seen a lot of people try to define what specifically it means to be a man or a woman in biological terms. This fails quickly. Not because there's no worth to biological analysis, but because, again, that would be talking about sex. Obviously, we're playing different games here. If we're talking about man or woman as a social category, right? What definitions are we adhering to? And you know, there's just not a consistent set. You cannot come up with a consistent, concrete, defined, and reliable set of definitions to describe in a social sense what it means to be a man or a woman, without excluding people who you would otherwise consider to be a part of that group.
Okay, yeah, that entire thing. I think that's what this whole debate is technically going to be about. Are trans men men? Yeah, that whole thing. Oh wow, and so interesting too, by the way, that it seems like Sanvi, I guess that's her name, Sanvi, that like it seems like she is against trans men particularly. That's really interesting. Normally, when you see this debate, it's usually trans women, and on the basis of like sexual assaults and the fear mongering of grooming towards that whole thing. Goodness. Explosions above me. But like yeah, no, the entire idea there is that like yeah, if you're trying to say who's a man and who's a woman, and you're trying to use that based on biological issues, that is sex. If you're trying to base it on the cultural markers of what we expect men and women to do, like dude, back in the day, the stuff that European men wore was basically dresses. Back in the day, when it came to a lot of the more tribal societies, men and women wore essentially the same things. Long hair, I mean, like, whether or not men were shaving their hair or not, or cutting their hair or not, definitely depended on the era, and the area where you were in. Um, Women with long hair, that's always been like kind of a normal thing, but I mean, like, let's just be real about it. And a lot of women today could probably admit this. They could probably agree with this statement. But long hair on men can look really good too. Like all the people who were big on Jason Momoa or Chris Pratt when he was doing the Star-Lord thing with the short hair that grew like a little bit longer, or like there's so many, like Fabio, even back in like what, the 80s. Like it's been a thing. Like people have understood that like long hair is just kind of an attractive feature. It's one of those things that catches the eye. That's not an inherently male or female trait. Makeup, like why would that be? If male Hollywood actors have been wearing makeup for decades. Stage actors back in the day, all female roles were still played by men. Like there's so many different things about this. I mean, it's just weird to try and draw those lines by those particular points of view. To me, like I don't know, this is all just my opinion, but like I very much agree with what Bausch has to say here. And I'm really curious, like, with where this chick is going to be coming back from, because, like I said, I saw something about this, but I didn't actually watch this debate. Um,
Or including people who you think shouldn't be a part of it. There's
let's just
just no
look. Let's
real
just
way
listen.
to do it,
Let's let
which is
Bausch
why I
finish.
think that the entire concept is arbitrary and useless. We refer to people as men and women because it can be socially useful. It can be a shorthand. It can give you an idea of what to expect with them, what basic understandings or premises or expectations you should bring to the table when talking to them. But in terms of like rigidly trying to define in a concrete sense what it all means, I think that an incredible amount of time has been wasted on this particular
Was that on my side? I just heard a system alert. Was that on my side or was that on their side?
subject when talking to them.
No, that was
But
on
in
their
terms
side.
of
Okay.
like rigidly trying to define in a concrete sense what it all means, I think that an incredible amount of time has been wasted on this particular subject. So until we decide to do away with the whole thing, until we recognize that we really are wasting our time with these definitions, yeah, trans men are men, trans women are women. I don't really care about the particulars. If somebody wants to be treated a given way, I think they should be. I really think when you say you're a man or a woman, you're basically just saying, here's like a general block of expectations that I want you to keep in mind when engaging with me. This is a different set of social roles. Take these ones, work with this. It's not just about femininity or masculinity, because femboys aren't women and butch women aren't men. You can want to bring a set of expectations to the table with gender and then contradict or challenge them with nonconformist behavior. It's just part of the complexities behind social roles. And
Have a
the
goal and
less
add a
time we
spirit. That's a
spend
thing.
worrying about them and the more
Oh, I got
time
an
we
achievement.
spend trying to fix material problems, I think we'll all be better off for it.
Thank you very much for that opening, Vosh. And
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything that he had to say there. And that's so okay, so to me that's a little bit surprising because when I first started watching Vouch, when I started like paying attention, like the first thing that I saw was that whole catastrophic debate he did with Professor Flowers and how badly that went. And like I didn't really care too much for him after that. Like, okay, so it had nothing to do with what his arguments were. His arguments I don't necessarily agree with all of them, but they weren't unsound arguments in general. It was just the way that he went about having the argument. It's the way he went about doing everything that kind of just like really put me off. I was like, bro, like, why are you being this much of a dick about this? And at the end of the day, like, I don't really agree with him immediately going to the realm of pushing people on their beliefs by just like saying, okay, well, that what you believe is Nazism. Because one, I don't really feel like that does a whole lot to, and I don't think that does a whole lot to really like help. You know, I don't think that does a whole lot to really show how things really are. You know, it doesn't really like he says he does it to like throw people off and then to really challenge their assumptions, so they have to come up with a different way to argue about it. And I get that, but if somebody came at me and was just like, "Oh, well, that what you believe, that's basically white supremacy," like he did with her, you know, that's basically white separatism. Or no, he said, what did he say? He said that's basically what white nationalists say, and then he called her what is that? Spencer, yeah, Robert Spencer, or Richard Spencer, whatever his fucking stupid name is. I hate that prick. But yeah, he said that the stuff that she was saying might as well be said by this guy, or it's the same type of shit that he says. And it's like, I mean, just because it's separatism doesn't mean it's the same thing as white nationalist separatism. Just because she's in your mind right there advocating for separatism doesn't mean that that's the type of person she is. And he's insisted for over a year at this point that she absolutely is a black separatist, where she has said repeatedly she doesn't really believe that that is a thing that would work for her or the way that she thinks things should go. So I got really upset with him in general, but when it came to his discussions on just about everything else, I've had very little to disagree with in, you know, in his arguments. Just sometimes the way he goes about it is a little, I think, less than conducive to having a good conversation. Let's I gotta take a listen to what this chick is gonna say, because like Vouch's stance on all these things I've heard in a couple of debates that he's responded to. I've definitely, I kind of just like glossed over a little bit, because I honestly, if you guys are watching this and you're on this side, you already know what Vouch's things are, and if you're not, you probably sat and listened. So I want to hear what this chick has to say about why trans men aren't men in her mind.
And want to say, folks, if it's your first time here at Modern Day Debate, I'm your host, James. Want to let you know we are a neutral debate platform.
Oh, okay. Yeah, James, by the way, I am not a neutral debate platform. Uh, at some point, I will try and maybe have some debates on this channel. And we'll see, you know, we'll see how that goes. I would like to. It'd be fun. But I am definitely not neutral. I have my own biases, and we'll get into a lot of what that's all about a little bit later.
Hosting debates on science, religion, and politics. We hope you feel welcome no matter what walk of life you're from. If you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button, as we have plenty more debates coming up. You don't want to miss out on them, so hit subscribe right now. We're going to go over to Sanvi for her opening. Thanks so much for being with us. Sanvi, the floor is all yours.
I can screen share?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. What? 1 second.
Someone just beta. I love looking at this chat. Did she have a PowerPoint?
Whatever. I'll do it
Oh,
like this.
is this what they were saying about her bringing a PowerPoint?
Hi.
Hang on.
Thank you so much for
I just looked up at the actual video because I was rolling through a little bit, but that's what all that silence was her trying to set up her PowerPoint. That's fucking hilarious. Oh, that's so good. Okay, and so I'm like reading some of the stuff here. Okay, if people treat you as a man, you become one. Can people treat you as black to become black? Says someone, and someone else. Vouch already lost. Is Vouch saying therapy is useless? There's a lot of hot takes in here, but then we got, you know, Vouch crushed it. Wow, she's failing at setting up this PowerPoint, and I see down there Samvi power level rising. I don't know, man.
I'll do it like this. Okay.
Also, you spelled her name wrong.
Hi. Thank you so much for hosting this debate.
I need to turn her down a little bit, at least in my head. Is that a little loud for you guys? Holy crap, that was ear roasting a little. Her audio might be worse than mine. I don't know. My audio is pretty bad though, so that might be hyperbole on my part. I won't qualify that.
James, thank you so much, Vosh, for being here. I'm really excited to talk with you today. And today I will argue the case for the proposition that trans men are not men. So before we get into it, I'll define a couple key terms. I'm sure Vosh is familiar with these, just for the audience and just so we have a general understanding going into this debate. So a transgender man is somebody who is assigned female at birth, but who identifies as a man. A cisgender man is a non-trans man. So a person who is assigned male at birth and who also identifies as a man. So why does trans man have man in the name? I've heard people make this argument that if it has man in the name, it's no different than saying tall man or black man. But things like anti-truth have truth in the name, yet there are not truths. So one thing to alleviate some confusion about this is many people in the literature refer to trans men as trans-identifying females. That way we're clear about exactly what we're talking about. And one more thing about why it's important to
I see, like, already we're having a problem, like trans men being called trans-identified females or trans-identifying females is automatic. Like, you're already starting off on the point of I'm not going to address you the way that you want to be addressed. You're already like, okay, this is the cool thing about responding, about like reacting to a debate as opposed to like having the fucking debate, is I can actually like just say what I feel here and I can interrupt her without her continuing to talk or trying to come back at me, and that's it makes it feel a little bit unfair sometimes. So I just wanted to point that out. Like, I get the chance to do this, but like you're already starting from a point of view that I'm not going to approach this. I mean, like, and of course she has to. The debate is about these terms. But like calling somebody a trans-identifying female when you're talking about a trans person who identifies as man. That, first of all, that's super confusing. Right? That's just going out of your way to just be like, nope, this person's a female. And okay, you identify as a white person. So what if somebody just continuously started calling you a Negro? Now, it doesn't matter if that is like, I mean, you have white skin, whatever, cool. You feel like you look the part of a white person. You feel like that is how you are. If somebody just started calling you not that thing, wouldn't that be like hugely problematic? You know, if you felt like you were telling the truth and someone just started calling you a liar, and if their justification for it before was, well, you've lied before, so you are a liar, everything you say is a lie, right? That would be upsetting because this person is like straight up telling you that you're not what you are. That's insulting, right? Like, ugh. Okay, anyways, going on.
actually have this debate and to actually know what we're referring to when we refer to men is because we use the term. If we use a term, we should know what we're referring to. Otherwise, it's equivalent to just not understanding a different language. If the
No, I gotta stop you on that. Okay, so for example, there are so many different places where language is not exactly the same, just from region to region. Like, we all speak English, but to take an extreme example, right? So I've had friends. Okay, this person in particular wasn't like a friend of mine. One of my roommates back in Atlanta had invited one of their friends over from England, and when she got there, the first thing she said, you know, because we were, you know, kind of teasing, you know, joking at the accent and everything, and she said, are you taking the piss? And we're all like, no, we don't have to go to the bathroom. And that kind of like all went over our heads. You know, I'm like 20, 21 at this point. So like I'm just chilling there, and I'm like, okay, that went over my head. And then a little bit later, as we continue teasing everything, she's like, are you guys gonna give me a little stick while I'm here? And like me and my brother, we just like kind of looked at each other like, she did say that, right? And we had to like clarify what she meant by that. But then like once she did, we didn't then decide that she meant what we thought, like, or like that she was propositioning us for sex. We realized, oh shit, we misunderstood due to an issue in language that exists even within the same language. Now, to take a different tack on that, right? So there are a lot of idioms here in America. Let me see. Let me think of like a really common one. My brain's kind of blanking on one right now. Okay. Oh, okay. No love lost. Okay, when someone says there's no love lost between people, as far as I know, what that means is okay, so this bad thing happened between these two people, but they already didn't like each other. Right? There was no love there in the first place, so even though this happened, there was no love lost between them. There wasn't any there to begin with. But I've heard people use this in such a different way. When they say there was no love lost, they're basically saying, hey, bro, no problem. Like, we're friends, we'll get over it. It's just something between buds. And that's like the complete opposite from what I understand of what that means. So I've definitely ended up having a deep misunderstanding with somebody when they said, "Oh man, no love lost," and I'm like, "Oh shit, okay, well I thought we were friends," and it's like, "Oh no, that's why there's no love lost, because we're friends," and I'm like, okay, because I was about to get really upset, like my feelings were hurt there for a minute. Just the idea that like if words don't have specific meanings, that humans can't adapt to that is crazy to me.
If the word has no meaning, then we should cease to use it. And then it also is false that trans men are men if the word has no meaning. But first, I'll give a quick account for the biological view. For other species, we have adult males and females. We have lion, buck, rooster, tiger, et cetera, et cetera. So it'd be quite astounding if we didn't have any adult human males or any word to refer to adult human males for our own species, yet we would have them for a plethora of other species. Clearly, the word man is the best candidate for how to refer to adult human males. It's the ordinary use of the word. It's generally, most trans-inclusive philosophers and activists agree that generally the term man and women are used to refer to adult human males and females. Under the social view of gender, which sounds like something sort of Vash kind of posited in the opening statement, someone is a man if and only if he exhibits the social, cultural, or behavioral traits typically associated with males, right?
Okay. Someone is a man if and only if he exhibits the social, cultural, or behavioral traits typically associated with males or masculinity. And is this an and or an or? He identifies with or encompasses the social archetype of a male. I mean, does it have to be both? Because I don't see why you can't identify with or encompass the social archetype of a male without exhibiting the societal, cultural, or behavioral traits typically associated, because it's typing, but like there are men that don't perform all or most or in some cases any of those masculine traits, right? Is that person not a man? It says, yet not all transgender men exhibit the societal, yeah, okay, and not all transgender men identify with or encompass the social archetype of male. No, I'd see, and I don't agree with that. I don't agree with this at all. Because as far as social archetypes or typical associations, those are all just types. Like, in order to be a man, by that, like, because you have to encompass the social archetype of a male. In order to do that, you have to, let's see, seek to father children, be a financial provider, be strong, potentially buff, muscular, probably tall, have the ability to grow good facial hair, be assertive and dominant in conversation and in action, etc., etc., etc. These are all the quote unquote social archetypes of masculinity. That's what it supposedly is to be man-like or manly, right? It's all that machismo shit. And like at the end of the day, like I can swing an axe with the best of them, right? I can go out there and chop wood. But when it comes to being a financial provider, like that's not really the role that I particularly hold in my family. I'm more of the family person, the day-to-day issues dealer with. I'm the guy who's here when the kids have an emotional problem or a social problem with each other. I'm the person who's here to do first aid. I'm the person here to take care of the dogs. I do a lot of cooking. I do a lot of cleaning, but that doesn't make me less of a man, even if it doesn't follow those basic social archetypes. My wife, right? She works 40 hours a week. She works a great job. She's a wonderful provider. She also helps with cooking and cleaning and helping to take care of the kids. She is my social rock and my emotional rock, and I'm the same for her. I don't think she's any less female because she takes care of financial things. I don't think I'm any less male because I'm the guy who stays home. I'm sure there are a lot of people who would disagree with that, but in that case, wouldn't they be calling me out of my sex? I mean, I'm still a man. I still have male gametes. I don't know. It's weird sort of way to look at things.
Something typically associated with females, I guess, according to Vosh, would be long hair, sun hats, dresses, piercings, things like that. So I assume the opposite would be the case for men, things that we typically associate with them. Another definition I've heard thrown around there is a man is somebody who encompasses the social archetype of a male. So when these people are referring to men, they're referring to people who encompass this social archetype. I think both of these definitions do not escape the objection of a feminine boy, as Vosh mentioned earlier, but we can get more into that later in the debate.
How not? How do those hang on? What did she precisely say there? Because it sounds like she said that if you're feminine but a boy, that these things. Okay,
encompass
hang on.
this social archetype. I think both of these definitions do not escape the objection of a feminine boy, as Vosh mentioned earlier, but we can get more into that later in the debate.
Okay, so that thing that I said that people who have those gametes don't necessarily follow those roles. Because like again, what about so I brought up like me and my wife as just like, basic everyday, you know, examples of this. But like what about the incredibly feminine people out there? What about the incredibly masculine women, incredibly feminine males? Who are absolutely, identify as male but are feminine, or identify as female but are masculine without being, trans. I feel like her definitions here don't really speak to that. I'm gonna go ahead and play this. I'm gonna grab some coffee. I gotta go around the desk. I can still hear, but you guys won't be able to hear me very well.
This view is the self-identification view. This view is very dominant in mainstream media nowadays. Someone is a man if and only if he identifies as a man. Obviously, I'm not the first one to say this is a viciously circular definition. You don't obtain any feature in reality simply by identifying as having such. And it's just a referent that's circular and uninformative ultimately.
Your whole argument's circular.
Okay. Now I'll touch on the gendered brain view. This view has been
Whoa, okay. I'm gonna read this before letting her just go off on this. Hang on. Some attempt to argue the following: if someone has a male typical brain pattern, then he is a man. Studies show that trans-identifying females, or trans men, have this male typical brain pattern, thus trans men are men. Problems with this view still excludes some trans men. There can be people with this brain pattern who don't identify as a man, and people without this brain pattern who do identify as men. So on this view, not all trans men are men. Okay, no, but the whole thing is that all of these individual things are valid reasons for a person to be a man if they choose to be. It's not that any one of these arguments supposedly trumps any of the rest, and none of your individual arguments even shut down any one of these points. You need to use multiple different things to attack these. Your whole thing is like, okay, well, according to this, not all trans men are men. I mean, but at the end of the day, if they identify as that, then who cares whether it's because of their gendered brain or because they choose to exhibit the masculine, the archetype. Like these, it doesn't really matter. Like, what are you talking about?
Floating around academia and the debate sphere. I've heard a lot of people say transgender people have brains closer to the opposite sex or the sex that they identify with, and therefore their identity is valid. The first thing I will note is that not all trans men do have brains closer to males, and certain homosexual men may have brains closer to females than males, yet we would say that they're still men. So I would say that under the gendered brain view, it would still be false that trans men are men. Okay, and now we have the prescriptivist view. The prescriptivist view, I think Vashra touched on this too, is that we ought to treat trans men as men, maybe to reduce harm, increase happiness. As a courtesy, we ought to treat trans men as men. They want to be treated as men, so we should treat them as men. One thing with this is that it conflates truth with utility.
Okay, wait, why? Okay, it may be useful or courteous to call trans men men, but it doesn't make it true. Okay, but okay, one. It would you say, and I hate to be this guy because I prefer to be honest as often as possible, but would you say it's impossible that a straight lie, could be beneficial? You know what I'm saying? Like, so for example, right? Say you're dating somebody, right? And they give you the basic, do these jeans make my butt look big? Right? Now, you know that the answer she wants is no, they don't make your butt look big. But they actually do. However, it's in a way that you find incredibly pleasant, and you would like to make that compliment. You can't exactly make that compliment by saying, yeah, they make your butt look good. It's deliciously big. Like, no, I should say, you can't just say, yeah, they do make your butt look big. It's awesome. You would have to alter that information to be courteous to the person, even though you're trying to express how you really feel. So you would probably say something along the lines of, they make your butt look nice. Or, dang girl, you look great. You don't need to directly respond to that thing if it makes you that uncomfortable to do that. But why would you go out of your way to make the other person feel uncomfortable just to satisfy your own comfort? Do you see what I'm saying? Like the idea there and the prescriptivist view right there is just the idea of like, look, if somebody wants to be this, let them be that. And I agree with that, but I can see why people would have a problem with that if they were deluding themselves into thinking that they were always radically honest. And that is why they absolutely have to speak the truth to this person because this person's clearly a liar. Hey princess, welcome to the chat. I don't know. Like, it's just her whole argument here is fucking annoyingly narrow-minded. I'm going back to hear like the whole beginning of the prescriptivist thing, because like I'm sure I misunderstand the prescriptivist argument. I don't really like. To me, it doesn't seem like an argument. Like honestly, out of basic courtesy, if someone tells me that their name is Mark, and I happen to have heard someone call them Marcus, I'm not gonna flip out and be like, "No, your name is Marcus." Like I'll call the guy Mark. You know, if that guy happens to be trans, he's still a trans guy. He's still a guy named Mark. I'm just like, there's not. It's so stupid. It's so irritating.
Okay, and now we have the prescriptivist view. The prescriptivist view, I think Vashra touched on this too, is that we ought to treat trans men as men, maybe to reduce harm, increase happiness. As a courtesy, we ought to treat trans men as men. They want to be treated as men, so we should treat them as men. One thing with this is that it conflates truth with utility, right? So it can be useful to lie to people sometimes, like in the case of terminally ill patients. Sometimes we'll lie to them about their chances of survival in order.
Whoa, see that one I see. Okay, lying to a terminally ill patient about their chances of survival. As far as I know, the only person who would really have any right to be talking about their chances of survival would be their doctor. And I feel like their doctors have an ethical and moral obligation to tell them the truth about their prognosis. If there are people out there that are just lying to people, oh, don't worry, dude, you're gonna beat this cancer. Like, there's positive thinking, like, hey, be strong, you can do this, versus, like, telling somebody who's got 3 days to live that they're going to be fine 5 years from now when their daughter's old enough to get married, like so they have a chance to see that. Like, no, that's wrong. I'm sorry. That's a bad lie.
The case of terminally ill patients. Sometimes we'll lie to them about their chances of survival in order to increase utility, increase their chance of survival, increase their well-being. So a lie can be useful, but it has nothing to do with the proposition, are trans men men? Because it can both be true that trans men are not men, and also be true that we ought to treat trans men like men. These two statements are not mutually exclusive.
But, like, why would you get to decide for somebody else what they are? You know what I'm saying? Like, why doesn't that person get to choose who they are? Like, as far as true, like, is the whole reason why you're afraid about this because you think that, like, one day it might be relevant to you whether someone is a man or a woman in some way, that not knowing the right one would cause you harm? Because otherwise I can't really figure out why this is a problem for you. Right? Like, is there a time when using a pronoun you don't agree with is going to hurt you? Huh? Because, like, if it hurts a trans person's feelings, then yeah, it definitely did hurt that person. And no offense, but, like, if you're not dealing with that kind of thing, if you aren't already in a class of people who, due to the struggles that they're going through with this situation, don't feel as comfortable as other people with themselves in the first place, having somebody else openly be like, I'm not comfortable with the one thing that you did find that makes you comfortable with yourself, I feel like that's causing some pretty defined, like some pretty easily discernible harm. I don't know, man. Maybe I'm just an idiot. We're only 10 minutes into this. I'm so grumpy.
So under the prescriptivist view, it still is false that trans men are men. And I think that ultimately any view that you take on what you're referring to when you refer to a man, all of these different views, it just ends up being true that not all trans men are men. There's not a definition that can be 100% trans inclusive. And that's a big problem with this debate is the special pleading and the gish galloping that happens when a definition or a referent is given counterexamples, and then people want to revert to something else. But I'm excited to get into this debate, especially like the social worldview. And thank you, Vosh, and thank you, James, once again. I'm ready to get started.
Okay, cool. So now now you guys all know their stances, where they're coming from, and I mean, good, I guess. I am, like I said, I'm already pretty frustrated about the way this is all going. Trying to figure out if it's just my general internet that's making the broadcast quality over here on my monitor bad. Nope, nope, my broadcast quality's good. My Wi-Fi is a little bad right now. I am in the basement. It makes sense. Alright. I am actually connected to the network, though, so hopefully me switching that up didn't stress it. And I want to change, real quick, I want to get rid of a couple of things that don't make me a lot of money here. Shiny Pebbles get me more rares, so I'll keep that for now. Monkey I can get rid of, honestly. I get rid of one of the flowers. There we go. Alright, we'll get back into it. I want to hear Vosh's response to this, because, like, she said a lot of stuff that I'm sure he's going to get grouchy about. I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one who's irritated by the way this chick's coming across, so...
Thank you very much for
course.
that opening as well, Sanvi. We are going to jump into open conversation. Just a couple of quick housekeeping type things, folks. One, if you didn't know this, Modern Day Debate is available via podcast. Find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, you name it. Check us out. It's 100% ad-free. What are you waiting for? Find us on your favorite podcast app right now. We're going to jump into the open dialogue. Thank you very much. Vosh and Sanvi, the floor is all yours.
Of course. So we can take the irrelevant arguments off the table right off the bat. I don't think that being feminine makes you a woman or masculine a man. So the whole femboy tomboy thing doesn't mean anything to me. As for the pink blue brain argument, I also don't care about that. I don't care. A person can have the pinkest brain in the world, and I could still call them a man and think of them as one if they asked me to, and vice versa. So with regards to the other things, your truth and utility prescription argument is true in the sense that what is useful and what is true are not the same thing. Of course, the ultimate problem is that when it comes to language and definitions, we actually get to decide what's true. See, we're not doing math here. This isn't a 2 + 2 = 5 situation. Definitions can be expanded or contracted to include different understandings of how the world works. As our understandings grow, so do our definitions. This has been the case for basically every social construct we've ever had. Our understanding of what a biological female is, purely biological, not even social, has also adjusted with time. We're not simply looking at, for example, the presence of genitalia, as we might have in the past. A deeper understanding of genetics and gametes are now available when it comes to making these decisions. So if one were to say then that a person who had not previously been considered a biological female now is, due to a deeper understanding of genetics, this would not be a utility versus truth argument. We simply change what the truth is, adjust our definition, and get a better understanding of the world for it. I think there is utility in referring to trans men as men purely for harm reduction purposes, but I also think it's true. I think that, in fact, the reason there's utility in it is because it is true. The only thing that I care about is the argument from self-identification. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I don't think it's circular. Turns out most definitions, if you get to the root of them, are pretty impossible to nail down, right? You've probably heard of, or maybe even seen the Vsauce video, what is a chair? Turns out nobody can define what a chair is. By nobody, I don't mean not just internet people or people who do the debate circuit. I mean nobody, like it's not possible to. Because our understanding of a chair is so socially constructed. It's
Before she busts in here, I wanna bring up how, like, kind of awesome that whole argument is. I love that idea that when you talk about a chair, okay, so like this one, I don't know if they're gonna like go into it in this, but like, okay, so what is a chair? The basic thing you could say is it's something to sit on, right? But I can sit on the floor, I can sit on a bed, right? I can sit on a table, I can sit on a person. None of those things is a chair. So then you would say a piece of furniture you can sit on, but what about a stool or a sofa? You know, again, we bring up the bed and the table. Okay, it is a piece of furniture that is designed for one person to sit on. So, okay, how does that differ? Like, what is the distinction between a wooden chair with 4 legs and a back and arms versus, like, an armchair? How does a stool different from a chair, right? What's the difference between just, like, if I made just a box with a piece of wood sticking up off the back of it, that technically would count as a chair too, wouldn't it? But is that really what, like, if you just looked at that, would you be like, oh, look, a nice chair? You know, so like, as far as that goes, language is incredibly subjective, and context is one of those things that really does matter. I can understand the context of, like, maybe wanting somebody to express that they are trans. But you wanting that doesn't make it a thing that needs to happen in order for you to understand how this person is trying to portray themselves. And that's really a lot more important in a lot of cases, in most cases, I would say, than some objective idea of what they supposedly are as far as you're concerned. You don't get to define other people. You can look at anybody and look at the way that they're dressed, and you can make all kinds of prejudgments if you want to, but at the end of the day, those prejudgments are yours alone, and they only really matter to you. That is how you are framing the person that you're looking at, and how you are framing the way that you need to deal with that person. When a person tells you something about themselves, I guess you don't have to believe them. That's definitely your prerogative. But when someone tells you something about themselves, it's not something you can openly deny. You shouldn't. And when it comes to something like whether or not somebody's trans, you really need to think about whether or not you should. Like, with as much hate as this person is having, right? If a person is trans and they're, living their life, and say there are people around them that don't know that, and someone goes out of their way to, like, hunt down the truth and find out what's going on, like, you could be putting that person in danger. Because people fucking suck, man.
It's a matter of what's useful to us.
Okay, so are you endorsing the self-identification view? I know you mentioned you don't see it as circular. So a man could be somebody that identifies as a man?
Of course.
Okay, so I will address the argument from circularity first. So while it is true that at a certain point we run out of words to describe things, and this can be seen if you ask somebody, well, what does that mean? Well, what does that mean? Well, what does that mean? At a certain point, we run out of words. And when we do run out of words, what we do is we point to things within reality, is we just start pointing to particulars and we try to derive a universal. Like with triangles, and we start pointing to acute, obtuse triangles and trying to see what they have in common. That is how we take that idea. Now, the problem with saying a man is somebody who identifies as a man is that not only is it circular, it's viciously circular. Because if somebody were to ask you, Vosh, a man is somebody who identifies as a man, what is that? What is a man?
I could point to myself. I'm a man. I could point to other men. There are billions of them. I could point to lots of them. I love pointing at men.
Oh man, I love Vosh. So I recently found out that Vosh is openly, I guess, pansexual. I mean, he's said bisexual before, but he's mentioned before, like, when it comes to trans people or non-binary people, he really doesn't give a fuck. So like, I I love pointing at men. I love that. That was cute. That was cute. But like, yeah, no, and then that's the whole thing is, it's like, well, what is a man? Well, okay, I could point at a trans man. That's a man. Right? Like, what would be wrong with that? I could point at a big, tall, buff, strong man, and I could point at a short, skinny, kind of effeminate man, and they're still men. And like, at the end of the day, when you're talking about like somebody who absolutely doesn't understand your concept, I feel like you're summoning the concept of children. So it's not definitely that I'm gonna start pointing at people's genitalia, right? Like, that would be what you basically, that's where your logic goes down to, is, so if there are all these different types of men, and I'm asking, and a kid is asking, well, what is a man? Well, that's a man. Okay, but is that a man? Yeah, that's a man too. How are they both men? Well, see, that's the whole thing right there. If I'm not talking about, oh, because penises, then I don't understand what else it is that you're trying to get across there. And as far as it goes, a man is a person who wishes to be seen as a man, who works really hard at making sure that the world sees them as a man, who has potentially, in a lot of these cases, changed their entire lifestyle to be a man, or to be a woman in that case. Like, if trans women are also women. This knife cuts both ways, lady. I will say one thing about Sanvi, though. She expresses herself well. She seems really intelligent. If anything, I'm kind of sad and irritated and annoyed that these are her views, because she's an intelligent person. If she were thinking in a little bit more of an inclusive way, she could probably make all of the arguments against herself very well. That's one of the things that kind of irritates me, though, because it feels like she has to be being disingenuous, because she's not an idiot. She's not just some dumb asshole. She might be a little bigoted, and that sucks, but she's not stupid. And that's problematic for me, because damn it, if you're smart, your brain should work better.
Okay, so if somebody asks you what is a man, I don't think you would need to point, because you seem like we still have words left to give. So if they were to point to two men, like, these are both man, what do they have in common?
Would you do this with a chair?
I think we would do that with anything. That's how we come up with categories, is that we look at what things have in common. But
I mean, okay. Would you do that? Okay, what is a cabinet? Right, a cabinet is a piece of furniture, again, generally made of wood. Generally made of wood. With at least one door that you can open and space inside of it intended to store things, right? It doesn't differ from like a wooden safe or a drawer. Drawers are only different in that they tend to be flat planes with walls around them that you can slide in and out of something, where cabinets are sort of vertical areas with the door that opens in the front. It's really difficult to categorize things as very much specifically and objectively one thing or another thing. And one of the reasons for that is because, okay, when we're talking about manufactured stuff, if someone's made a chair, someone's made a variation on the chair, someone's made a variation on the variation, someone's made a double chair, someone's made a triple chair, now we've got benches. Like, all of these things still came from the basic idea of, I need a place to fucking sit down. But as time goes on and as life becomes more complicated, like, definitions necessarily need to change. More words do need to exist. I don't know if I'm necessarily with Fausch on the idea of gender abolitionism, because I'm not really on the idea of making there be less words. But, like, for example, the idea that gender is simply binary, that's problematic. The idea that trans men and trans women, for example, feel the absolute need to fit into these gender categories, and so do a change that literally makes them, puts them on the other side of something, that, as though there are only two sides to the coin, even that is kind of problematic. I think maybe there should be more words for it rather than less, but, like, I can also understand people's pushback when, there were a lot of words that came out at one point for, there were a lot of new genders that were popping up. People got really upset. There was a lot of pushback against that. That might be some time down the road before something like that could happen. All right, let me let them get back into it. Again, we're 15 minutes in now, but it's been over an hour. I'm not good at this, because, dude, there's so much that I want to say, like, already. I shouldn't have picked a 3-hour fucking debate.
The chair argument, I would say, I've heard a lot of trans activists say, well, if you can't define chair, then we don't owe you a definition of man or woman. And the first thing I would contest with that is, well, you're the one that made a claim about men and women, when I never made a claim about a chair. I never claimed a stool as a chair. I never claimed a bed as a chair. Yet trans activists do claim that trans men are men and trans women are women. So when you do claim for the truth of
Looking down at the comments, I see pink and fluffy super woke bloke saying, I love pointing at men. I love it.
something, you do need to define it. The second argument is that just because something like a chair doesn't really have something that we give thought to. If you're engaging in this debate, you're engaging in the gender discussion, I'm going to assume that people have given
We
thought.
needn't give thought to the gender thing either. I don't think it's particularly important. But you're also making a claim. I could be out in the park. I could point at a bench or maybe a bit of a stone outcropping that I could sit uncomfortably and say, a chair. You could insist rigorously that it is not a chair, that it is a bench or an outcropping or some other thing that is like but not like a chair. And we could have an argument on what a chair is. The only consequence of this would be the calories we burn by yelling at each other. It's a meaningless discussion because at the end of the day, a chair is just a general term we have to describe a thing we sit on. People's specific boundaries will expand or contract based on their preferences. It's like arguing wondering whether or not a Pop-Tart is a sandwich. They're deliberately meaningless questions. This is why I do not like the circularity argument definition. In a purely linguistic sense, at the root of all things, they're all circular. We generalize a concept, and the worth of a term is how specific an image we can evoke. What does it mean? How useful is it? But there's no truth value in any of these terms. We make the terms. If we want, we could split the term chair into
Well, that's not necessarily
17
true.
subwords.
Terms can have truth value. Like, for example, before humans came into existence, before Homo sapiens came into existence, do you think gravity existed?
Well, sure.
Do you think gravity as a concept existed before the word gravity existed?
Yes, we gave term to the concept.
Yeah,
Nice,
so
I
we
got
just
another
recognized that concept, some force among these large masses of objects, and we put a word to it. That's with any concept.
But that's
So
a concept
truth
versus
is
the word
recognized
itself.
and communicated, not created.
But that's a truth value to a universal concept, not to the word. The word gravity, the truth, if one were to say, for example, no, gravity can refer to this, that, the other, but not to this particular phenomena. Actually, gravity doesn't specifically refer to the way, say, matter interacts with dark matter, or the way light bends around black holes. We're going to reterm this. It'll be a different word. There would be no truth value in that, because, again, we made the word gravity. The fundamental universal concepts remain the same. Biological sex remains the same, but experiential phenomena, the way we term and define things, we build those boundaries. And when it comes to, especially when it comes to something that's defined relationally, socially, like gender, there is no discovery of gender. Our understanding of it has changed enormously over time and between cultures even today. So
Yeah, I was talking about that a little bit earlier, that yeah, okay, so when it comes to stuff like sexuality and gender and all of those things, like the natural state, the normal way that people have behaved is to be more accepting. In Roman times, there were great grand orgies where everyone would just be banging each other. And you know what, that's not necessarily the greatest thing in the world. I'm sure that disease being way more rampant at the time was partially due to stuff like that. But it was acceptable for more of history for homosexuality to exist. In Roman culture, by the way, there was a large culture of trans people. A lot of them, and this has been a thing, unfortunately, through a lot of time, but because of the basic exotic nature, the difference, the rarity of the situation, a lot of them ended up working in sex work in the Roman Empire, as far as I understand. But they were an accepted class of people, and they weren't subject to vitriol and hatred the way that they have been in America and a lot of the world over the past 50 to 100 years. I mean, Thailand still has a huge culture where a lot of the economy is actually driven by trans people, again in sex work, but a lot of their a lot of their tourism, unfortunately, is driven by that. I say unfortunately, but straight up, I don't have a problem with sex work. I just wish that people were there to just see Thailand. Thailand is beautiful. Um, it's just there's the Greek culture was highly accepting of this, down to certain books that people may remember that I'm not actually going to get into right now. But at one point, I do want to do a review of one of them in particular. In Japanese culture, homosexuality was definitely a thing, and when it came to courtesans, a lot of them you would find out. Well, I should say we've come to find out that a lot of even more famous courtesans were trans people. So it's really weird to say the natural status of things is man and woman and binary gender, when that hasn't really been the case. It's no different than people in the past saying, oh, the natural state is man and woman and blah blah blah, because even over human history that hasn't been the case. Even when it comes to animals, that's not necessarily the case. So it's just a weird sort of fucking argument to even make that oh, well, it's always been this way. No, it hasn't. Oh, well, people need to know these things. Historically, no, they haven't. Historically, no one's given a shit until relatively recently.
So the idea that we're discovering and giving name to some kind of fundamental truth is just not the case here. We're all winging it. And I don't think we should wing it in ways that are exclusionary or harmful. If we are having a discussion on an arbitrary concept, we should lean towards ones which give greater understanding and lesser harm.
Yeah, so with the man is somebody who identifies as a man, lessening harm or whatnot, I would still argue that when you say a man is somebody who identifies as a man, or anytime anybody ever uses a word in the definition, it leads to an infinite regress. Whereas if we don't have words at all, like say we both couldn't speak or communicate,
An infinite regress. Is that like a term that people use? That's not like, it's grammatically incorrect, first of all, but like is that like what is an infinite regress? Does she mean like that you keep on going? Because to regress is to go backwards. So an infinite regress means going all the way back to the source. Which, by the way, when we're talking about a discussion of the meaning of words, going back to the source doesn't seem like a terrible idea. Um, but like, what does that mean? I want to give me your words again, lady.
Or any time lessening harm.
Or harm.
Yes. So with the man is somebody who identifies as a man, lessening harm or whatnot, I would still argue that when you say a man is somebody who identifies as a man, or anytime anybody ever uses a word in the definition, it leads to an infinite regress. Whereas if we don't have words at all, like say we both couldn't speak or communicate, we would still have our senses to point to things. So
But where's the harm? She said in the idea that it produces harm, there's this infinite regress, which she doesn't explain. But if we didn't have words, we'd still have our senses. Okay, again, you're still getting into that weird thing where, like, we need to experience someone's genitalia in order to get to the truth of this matter.
So that's discrete, right? At a certain point, all you can do is discretely point to things. Whereas if you define a man as somebody who identifies as a man, who identifies as a man, who identifies as a man, it ends up being infinite. There's no way to ever come to a close there.
This doesn't mean anything. What does it mean to be cool? See,
What is
you
it?
can find synonyms
Yeah, I'm gonna get into that. That's interesting. What does it mean to be cool? I don't know, Vaush, but I'm pretty sure you don't either. No, I'm teasing. Vaush is pretty alright. But like, yeah, it's like the idea is like a man is someone who identifies as a man, is someone who like why does it not stop there? A man is someone who identifies as a man. A woman is someone who identifies as a woman. Someone who identifies as a man can still wear dresses. Right? I don't see any reason why a trans man couldn't choose to wear a dress. And it would make, to me, the same statement as as someone who was assigned male at birth wearing a dress, which is, hey, look, a man breaking the gender norm. A trans man wearing a dress doesn't become a woman again. Right? Like, what? I'm so confused by her argument. It just doesn't make sense. Her argument doesn't make sense to me.
synonyms for what it means to be cool. You can to be
Infinite. There's no way to ever come to a close there.
This doesn't mean anything. What does it mean to be cool? See,
What is
you
it?
can find synonyms for what it means to be cool. You can find lots of them, in fact. But in reality, at the end of the day, we all learn what it means to be cool by being shown examples. And despite that, the examples we're shown are the highest.
A piece of furniture for one person to sit on with a back, a seat, and 4 legs. This is the definition of a chair from Oxford Dictionary. Okay, yeah, but see, like, I can think of a lot of things that have a back seat and 4 legs that could be described as a piece of furniture that are only for one person that are not chairs. First of all, like, define legs. What are legs? Would wheels count as legs? Why wouldn't they count as legs if they serve the same purpose to connect the thing to the floor that you're sitting on? Like, there's so many arguments for it. Linguistics is a quagmire, my dude. I love that someone paid £5 too. Supreme Emperor Kiza paid £5 to have that posted up there. Okay, hang on.
Examples. And despite that, the examples we're shown are the highest level of arbitrary. What was cool 50 years ago is not cool today, and what is cool now will not be cool 10 years from now. So we're talking about a concept, coolness, which everyone has some understanding of, which exists all over the world, which is fully social, and which can be referred to only through direct example. I don't see, there's the infinite regress thing. This is something that I did not learn from reading linguistics, but I did learn from the Internet Debate Pro circuit.
Okay, cool. So it's not actually a thing. I was concerned because, like, infinite regress, that doesn't make sense. I'm like, what the fuck? Thank you for addressing that, Vaush. I know, and I know you can hear me, so I will just assume you're welcome.
I think this is just a Weasley way of trying to apply to trans identification a greater standard for justification than exists for any other term or concept. Because I just don't think that we do this for other things. The infinite regress of coolness? Who cares, nerd? What's cool is cool.
Yeah. So, what other word besides man and woman do you define? Use the word in the definition.
Use the word in the definition? What do you mean?
You said a man is somebody who identifies as a man, which uses the word man in the definition of man. So,
Okay, fine. Let me change that. A man is someone who identifies as one. I I don't have to use the word man to say the same statement.
What other words besides man and women do we use to define themselves?
We could just say like a man is somebody who identifies with the gender role associated with masculine behavior, but not exclusively. If you want to like avoid the word man, that is purely a semantic argument.
Okay.
Because I can construct an
Okay, cool. We're like on the same page here, Vaush.
infinite number of definitions for man that adhere to my understanding of what a man is without actually using the word man. That's just a word game. But if you talk about like how much are we actually advancing our understanding of the concept, well, whether or not you have synonyms, because cool has many synonyms, they're only synonyms. And a synonym does not give you an understanding of a word, right? Like you don't learn what cool is by learning what the term rad means. And because when you read the definition for rad, it's like, oh, rad, oh, that means that something's sick. Well, we're not learning anything. We're just finding extra words here.
Would you say that something is cool if it identifies as cool?
If it's identified to be cool, then certainly.
Identified or identifying?
Well, something can't identify as cool because coolness is a concept, not a person. So it would have to
Okay,
be identified from outside
yeah, I
source.
think this comes into my other thing. Like, there's no feature of reality you obtain simply by identifying as having such. So I don't know why the same wouldn't be true for man.
But that's not the infinite regress argument. Now we're talking about whether or not self-identification is a valid metric for social claims. But infinite regress is something that would apply to the term cool as well, because outside the description of synonyms, you kind of have to just point to real life examples. Well, is it
I
cool
don't
to do
think
this?
so.
Is it cool to do that?
I think we identify things as cool if we show some type of enthusiasm or friendliness towards it, towards the noun, then we call it cool.
That's not what cool means, and you know it.
I think that's like the literal definition.
Being enthusiastic. Oh, so
Yeah,
people
I mean,
can't
I can
be
check really
nerdy.
quick, but I think that's actually the definition.
Wait,
from,
wait.
like,
Do you think that people use the term cool by looking up the definition of cool and going, oh, well, I mean, I can look really cool.
Yeah, well,
really quick.
enthusiasm just means that it
Cool
brings you some type of like
definition.
amazing sense. It doesn't have to be like enthusiasm in the way that you're describing it. When you describe something as cool, you just have a preference towards it. You like it.
But liking something and it being cool are not even remotely the same thing. And anyone who uses the English
That's
language
why
is
I
aware of that.
defined it as having friendliness or enthusiasm towards a noun.
That also isn't really how we use towards a noun. What do you mean? Like
Noun is
Okay. She's defining it in terms as like I'm cool as in I'm all right. That's cool. But so having if people are enthusiastic about you, you're cool. I feel like that's a pretty crappy definition of cool. Because like which people? All people? Some people? A particular group of people? Just these groups but not these groups? These people don't matter. There need to be this many people who are enthusiastic about it to be cool. Like that doesn't, first of all, that seems like it's more about like referring to like a concept, like thinking that something is cool rather than like this person is. But I mean, again, semantic arguments, right? But she seems like she's very smug about her definition here, and it doesn't really address the issue.
person, place, thing, idea.
so like wait, thinking that like liking a thing would mean that thing is cool.
Oh wait. Yeah, wait. A thing is cool if people think it's cool. Oh shit, that's circular. You just used the word in your definition.
Cool.
Yeah, you could call it that. Absolutely. If you like a water bottle, that water bottle is cool.
How is that not circular? It's cool if it's cool. It's cool if you like it, that makes it cool. If you think it's cool, it's cool. How's that not circular?
Do you
Like how is that objective? First of all, that makes it definitely not an objective quality, which is kind of what he's trying to say about being a man. Okay.
do you really think that's how like people's understanding of the term cool is just a synonym for when they like a thing?
I didn't just say when they like a thing. I said when they show enthusiasm towards a noun.
Show enthusiasm.
Can you give me
towards
a
noun.
Can you
Sure.
give me a counter example?
Sure, absolutely. We can acknowledge that things or people are cool despite not liking them, like the cool kids in school who we actually quite dislike because they're unapproachable and standoffish. We can say that things are cool even though it's an act and like the act is not something you personally enjoy. Like I think that skateboarding is cool in a kind of like post-ironic, like Sunset Overdrive, wow, look at how hard you're trying sort of way. But I have no personal affinity for it and find skateboarders quite annoying, actually. What is or isn't cool is an incredibly see the interesting thing here, and I think that anyone watching will understand that when they think of the term cool, it goes beyond, you know, liking a thing. Is that by trying to concretely define coolness, all you've done is robbed it of its coolness. You've taken a worthwhile and useful English term and you've crippled it in an attempt to bring it in line with the absurd standards you hold for gender definitions. In reality, if you were to similarly cripple every word of the English language, we would all be dead men. There would be no Shakespeare. We would all be limping like zombies through the streets. The fact that these words are fluid, that they have meanings and definitions that we kind of pick up on and pull and twist and play with, that's not only English, that's literature. And to have all of that wiped aside and going, no, a man has to be, no, it can't be regressive. It has to have this specific definition. We don't apply these standards to anything outside of scientific technical definitions, like what grain of soil constitutes an acceptable range for like apartment construction, stuff that we decide the boundaries for. We don't do this narratively.
I would say like with cool, we don't define something that's cool if it's called cool. Now, to make the use mentioned distinction a little bit clearer, cool must refer to something, right? Maybe it's not something we like. Maybe it's just something that we attribute to something other people like. Either way, notice how when I said that, I didn't use the word cool, because using the word in the referent creates an uninformative definition.
See, we're dead men right now. This is death. You're killing cool right now. It's a murder. And this is evidence for the police. No,
You're killing coolness right now. I love it. I don't think it's like the best argument in the world to make, but like this particular conversational track has definitely run its course here.
No, I mean
we can move off of it if you want, but like
no, but I mean it though. Like I don't think you believe what you're saying, right? Because like here, you know what's cool in American culture? Black people, AAVE, slang that Black queer people come up with that gets taken by Black women, that gets taken by white women, that gets taken by white gays, that gets brought into the general public. But American culture broadly doesn't find Black people or Black behavior cool. In fact, hegemonic American culture is mostly committed towards attacking Black culture, ghetto culture, their fashion, their aesthetic, their way of speaking. And then 10 years later, everything they were doing becomes mainstream. So there's something countercultural about coolness. Something has to be brave, daring. It has to be evocative. It can't just be likable. Likability is Mr. Rogers. But
okay,
Mr. Rogers isn't cool in the same way that
that's fine. It still doesn't mean cool is something that identifies as cool, something that is said that is cool.
Well, I'm only talking about the infinite regress argument, not the identification argument. That's a separate thing.
Infinite regress comes with using the word in the referent. So a woman is somebody who identifies as a woman, a man is somebody who identifies as a man. Something that is cool is something that people prescribe to people.
Something that's cool is something that's cool. I don't think you're going to find a better definition than that. And trust me, linguists have tried. You can find papers on this stuff. These are not ideas that can be baked into a single definition.
Do you think that like murder could be called cool?
Absolutely. Well, yeah, there are tons of, go read history. There are some metal goddamn murders that have happened throughout history. Yeah, they killed Julius Caesar, 57 people stabbing him all at once. I don't know. That seems kind of cool and countercultural. Hell yeah.
So I think maybe you show enthusiasm towards that idea and concept, but many others don't. And that's the way we define it.
But there are lots of things that I think are cool that I don't like. For example, the Hugo Boss Nazi uniforms are widely regarded as being fashionable in the whole like evil Sith, dark empire, black leather kind of thing. I don't find Nazis even remotely cool. If anything, that's more like cosplay. That's LARPing is cool. That's like how do we make our horrible death soldiers look cool? But an effort was made, right? There's a reason they paid out for those leather uniforms.
Yeah, so back to kind of what I was saying though, would you say that like the definition of man, when you say a man is somebody who identifies as a man, and if you were to ask you what a man is, would you be able to like give us any type of thing?
Well, I could point to myself. I'm a man.
How do you know?
Because I identify as one, of course.
So you know that people are men and women based off that they tell you that they're a man or woman?
How else would you know what's going on in their brain? I have to use
So-
the same mode of inference to ask lots of things about a person.
So take something like
You could
somebody
tell
that
I'm a
doesn't
biological
take-
male by
take-
looking at me.
take somebody that doesn't speak English, for example. If they don't say the words "I am a man," how do you know that they're a man? Because one implication of this definition of this, a man is somebody who identifies as a man, is that manhood is confined to English speakers. There are no non-English speaking men.
Of course, there are non-English speaking men. We
But they
have,
don't identify as men.
yes, but they have analogous understandings of gender, considering that we have man as a gender to just be the collection of social rules and expectations
See, there's the
associated with the male sex.
there's the non-circular definition, a collection of roles and things that we associate with the male sex. That
Well,
is the
sure, that's that's just what it is we understand a man to be, but you don't have to adhere to those roles to be a man. And in fact, we don't. There are plenty of like heterosexual or effeminate men who we consider to be part of the social category of men, despite, I don't know, doing their fancy pants makeup stuff or
right.
whatever it
So
is.
that
they like doing.
definition fails.
How does that definition
Because
fail?
then you commit a special pleading fallacy. If you say that a man is somebody who encompasses these traits that we typically associate with males, but then you say, oh,
I
well,
didn't
there's
say
also-
that.
Oh, excuse me, I thought you said that they encompass these roles or whatnot.
No, it's associated with those roles, but they don't have to encompass them. There are femboys and tomboys, right? Like there are
So what
plenty
was
of
your
people. who have-
what was your referent for when you refer to men? What are you referring to?
I think that when man as a gender category, as something that we understand or have built for people to identify with or not identify with, is just the roles and expectations associated with the male sex. That's not a
Yeah, that's what I
universal
said.
thing. Well, no, but that's just a set of associations. You can choose whether or not you want to be a part of that group.
Yeah. So what makes you a man?
Identifying as part of that group.
Part of what group?
The one that I just described. The
The
gender.
social role thing.
Right. If man is a collection of roles and expectations associated with the male sex, it's like a filter through which you view a person. It's a lens of analysis. It's a decision to identify as one
Well,
because
that's
it gives
kind
you
of
a
what I said,
perspective.
right? I said, in your view, a man is somebody who identifies or maybe encompasses the social roles we typically associate with males. Is that not correct?
I think you identify with a set of roles and expectations, but that doesn't
Okay.
mean you adhere to them. For example,
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I can
right.
accept it. That's
Okay,
totally
yeah,
fine.
yeah.
So under this view, it's still false that trans men are men, because there's plenty of trans men who do not identify with the social roles and expectations typically associated with males.
No, they do by identifying as men.
That's circular.
No, so we've already done
Okay,
the
because you said a
circularity
man
thing.
is somebody who
The man is just the collection of it's like being an American, all right? So I'm an American in a purely national sense. I was born here. But when we say, is this person an American, we mean more than just what is their nationality. Often American, it's like a melting pot spirit kind of thing. You know, are you really an American? But what does that mean? Well, what does it mean to be an American? It turns out no one human can meet every category for what it means to be an American because there are so many Americas. People in the South, the Northeast, the Northwest, the Southwest, the Center, the Rust Belt, they're all going to have different ideas of what it means to be an American. So when a person says like, yeah, I'm an American, even though they're say like a 2-year immigrant or something, not even a citizen, I'll listen to them. But for me, it's more of a general spirit thing. They're saying I'm an American because they want to be a part of that category, not because they want to adhere to every individual expectation within the category, because that's not possible.
Okay, so that's a little bit off topic, but like when you say a man is somebody who identifies as a man, and then I ask you, well, what is a man? Since you used it in the referent, you say a man is somebody who encompasses or identifies with, I guess identifies with is better if I understood, identifies with these social roles and expectations we typically associate with males, right? Is that a fair characterization?
I think that man, like American, is a social block. It's a big, heavy gravitational force that you can enter the orbit of if you choose to.
This is just a whole bunch of her like poking at him, trying to get him to find a different, or trying to get him to basically say something about, or trying to drag him into the corner of having to talk about genitalia or some other undefinable objective, or some other undeniable objective, characteristic or marker of what is a man. He's not destroying his own arguments like these people are saying in the chat. He's sticking to his guns about this. The entire idea there is that the idea of what is a man is a social construct. So trying to define it in a way that pins it down entirely is ridiculous. All social constructs change as society progresses, period.
I think that there are a lot of things that you might do or see or want to be in that orbit that you may or may not identify with, that you may consider to be a part of your experience, but it's something you're in the orbit of. And you can choose to break that orbit. With an American, I consider myself an American because there are some categories that I adhere to, some beliefs that I have that I consider fundamentally American, but not all. And as for men, right, there are like, I don't like wearing cowboy hats, but I swear to God, you go to a third of the men in the South of this country and they'll tell you that owning a cowboy hat is a fundamental part of being a man. You ever seen those memes of like the, you know, the like big saddle, no ox or whatever? You like those Southern is your boyfriend a woman memes where like, you know, if your boyfriend goes down to the range and he brings a 22, then it looks like you've got a girlfriend, miss, like that kind of shit. Obviously, that's not the kind of vibe I'm going for. But
also with that, how about all of the you might be a redneck stuff? Like, those are a whole bunch of just arbitrary little rules that Jeff Foxworthy came up with back in the day. If you do blah blah blah, or if you have blah blah blah, you might be a redneck. But like, why should that ever have been the case? You know, like I think one of my favorite ones was one of the ones he did on a bump for Comedy Central. He said something something something. You might be a redneck, and if you're watching this on a working TV that's sitting on top of a non-working TV, you might be at my house. I thought that was funny because, like, the second one, hey, that door did not close behind you. Is he caged? Okay. But yeah, like that whole thing is like just the arbitrary idea of like, what is a redneck, huh? We are 1/10 of the way. Well, not yeah. We're 30 minutes, so we're like 1/6 into this.
But you know, it is the same gravitational
I still
force.
feel like we're not getting a clear answer though, because
you never will. No, that's your problem. You're trying to get a clear answer on a social construct. You can't. Nobody can do that.
when you refer to men, what are you referring to?
I'm referring to the people who make the decision to orbit around that idea, that concept, to be a part of that that block.
Okay, so people that choose to orbit around this concept, and if I understand correctly, this concept is what we typically associate with males in terms of roles and expectations.
Though people obviously break with those traditions quite a bit while still being men.
Yeah.
You know, like
and
David
under
Bowie's.
this view, not all trans men are men, because a lot of trans men don't identify with those expectations, and they don't be in this orbit, as you would put it.
Well, you only have to identify as being a man. Identifying as a man is
and that's
being
what I'm
in that
saying.
orbit.
Then you're shifting between the two definitions, because which one? It can be. Hold on, it can be either or, but it cannot be like both. Okay, so like, would you say that a man is somebody who identifies as a man, or would you say a man is somebody who wants to orbit around these social roles?
First of all, why can't it be either or? I don't understand. Like, why can't it be both? It could be either.
Those are the same thing.
Those are not the same thing, because people can identify as men but not want to orbit around these social roles.
But orbiting around, but like I said, I am a man, but I don't adhere to every social role expected of men. It's not even possible for me.
Yeah, but you orbit, and some people don't even want to orbit.
But so by orbiting, I mean, like, you are, when you say I'm a man, you're choosing to enter that orbit. This is the collection of roles and expectations that you want to define your experience around.
I disagree. Plenty of people that identify as men, or hell, even people that identify as women, do not want to orbit around these traits associated with their preferred sex.
No. By orbit around, I mean that it's the framework through which you want to engage with and even defy these traits. So to give you an example, okay, being willful, being argumentative or stubborn means different things when you're a man and a woman. I can be argumentative and stubborn with very few social consequences. Women can't, and throughout history, it's been worse for them in this regard. Now, there are plenty of argumentative and stubborn women, willful women, hysterical women, whatever. They've made a lot of history. That's great for them. But if you were to take in just this one sliver, this facet of what it means to be a man or a woman, you can be a woman and be willful, and then your willfulness, even though it is not a feminine trait in the socially expected sense, is now understood differently because you're a woman. A person can be a man, say a femboy, and be very feminine, but femininity is different when you identify as a man than as when you identify as a woman. The roles and expectations are differently. A good example would be women's femininity, while often sexualized, is not innately sexual, right? Like, a woman can be feminine and present as such and be treated normally, but not as often as they would like to be, but it's possible. Femboys, on the other hand, that's practically a porn term. That's like a category on hentai sites, because femininity, when projected from someone who identifies as a man, very different. But that's different from trans women. Trans women, if you were going by a biological essentialist argument, aren't that different from femboys. And obviously the porn sites conflate the two, but that's their problem, not mine. But the expectations between the two are very different, because there's something about being feminine while being a man that confers a certain set of expectations. So
Okay,
what I mean to say by all of this is
that there are different expectations associated with people who feel that they're female versus people that feel that they're male. I can agree to that. That still makes it false that all trans men are men under this account, because plenty of trans men, just by calling themselves men, they do not want to adhere to these traits and expectations we have typically associated with
they don't
men.
have to adhere, but they're in the
and they don't identify with them, and they don't want to orbit with them. So under your view, not all trans men are men.
They are orbiting with them because they're engaging with the context by which they'll be judged in relation to those expectations.
Even if they openly say, I do not want anything to do with this, I do not identify with this, I do not like this, nothing to do with it, then by your logic, unless they're lying and misguided, they would have to be not a man.
No, they adopt the orbit and then they reject the characteristics. Same as me. I am an American. I accept that term and everything that it implies, but I fervently reject elements of what it means to be an American. I will say I'm an American, but I want nothing to do with, and then I complain about a bunch of stuff like a communist would.
Yeah. So when you say adopt the orbit, you mean just by calling themselves a man, they have agreed to be associated with all of these different things.
It's like an analytical framework.
So she really is just like circling the drain here. I almost want to like skip forward a little bit because she's just really harping on this. She really just like can't get past this concept. Like, if you identify as a man, you're a man. You need to give reasons why they're not instead of attacking his definition here.
We
Yes,
we can remove ourselves from it entirely, being non-binary, but if you are to be a man or a woman, if you say I am this or that, you are entering yourself, and you might not like all of it, but that is what it means to call yourself a woman. If a trans woman calls themselves a woman or a trans man a man, they know what they're signing up for. There will be expectations placed on them that are new and scary and often
but
unwelcome.
a lot of them don't associate their manhood with those expectations. They may call themselves men for different reasons, but do not orbit around, identify with those types of things. So under this view, it's still false, and I
don't like cowboy hats, and yet I'm an American man, so I reject those categories, those expectations. Cowboy hats are both American and male.
Okay, so when you're okay, let's just engage with this. When you say you're an American, what does that mean to you?
That's a complicated question. I like the theoretical values associated with this country's identity as a melting pot. They're not true values, but I like the theoretical values.
Okay.
And I have a strong cultural tie to a lot of the stuff this country has to offer.
Okay, so you like these values of like a melting pot. You like these cultural identities that the country has to offer, but can
some
people,
of them, and I do hate
some
America,
of them, whichever ones you like. But can people be Americans without liking those things?
Of course.
Perfect. Then when you refer to an American, you are not referring to people who want the melting pot or et cetera, et cetera. You're referring to something else. And that's the same problem we're having in this debate.
I'm referring to a vibe.
A vibe?
That's absolutely what it means to be an American, yeah.
Is that what you're saying for manhood too, though?
Well, yeah, it's a social category. A vibe is about as close of a term you're going to get in terms of synonyms. It's a analytical framework. I
know he's just using like millennial or post-millennial slang and everything, but I hate that he's taking the vibe argument here. We're gonna go main menu here. I'm gonna go change. Wait, do we have any mods? Do I have any mods? Oh, I have this one. I don't know if it still works. Let's try it. It's the Pokemon mod. I wanna be the very best. Oh no, is it gonna work? Oh, did that mess up my encoding? No, it didn't. Cool. We'll start on level 1. Let's get back to these guys.
A set of expectations. It's a lens you view the world through. A color. It's a something that tints. It shapes. It shades. And you can choose to look at things differently once you're there. But yeah, I really do think that's what it means. I think that's what you do as well, by the way. I think that you may take your womanhood for granted, as I take my manhood for granted, because I was born into it. I didn't have to fight for it. But I think that when I think of myself as a guy and you as a woman, I presume, I can't see your brain state, we want some things associated with what it means to be a man and woman, respectively, and we don't want other things. But what we want on the whole, as an aggregate, is to be understood in the context of man or womanhood. And I think that we make that choice too.
What is the vibe of manhood that all trans men associate themselves with?
Well, all trans men associate themselves with being a man. The vibe is
Which is what?
complicated, and well, it's the set of expectations, roles, and associations with the
But
male
that's
sex.
false, because not all trans men identify with those set of roles, expectations associated with the male sex.
But they identify with being.
I super disagree with this. I mentioned before, like, the idea of a trans man wearing a dress. Like, just because you identify as a man and then you don't do mannish things doesn't mean that you're not a man. I don't. If the starting point is you're a man, then you can do whatever you want, right? Like, so why does adhering to those things, why is that part of your definition for what a man is?
Men, which means
And that you
is the
can,
framework.
and this is the problem. Those are things are not mutually exclusive. You can identify as a man, and you can also not identify with the social roles and expectations associated with
But
males.
we can do that with American.
And
But
that's the confusion we're having, because you think
we can
those
do
things go
that
hand
with
in hand
American,
when they
though.
don't.
Can we not do that with American? There are plenty of ways in which I reject American behavior and American social expectations, and yet in spite of that, I consider myself an American. There's no single definitional point I could like gesture at to prove whether or not I'm an American in a social or cultural sense, right? What does it mean to say be culturally American? What does it mean to be culturally white or black? Mixed race people struggle with this.
Oh yeah, man. As one of those mixed race people, let me go ahead and talk about that struggle a little bit. Yeah, what does it mean to be mixed race? Like, I have within me, there's some European, in my ancestry. There's also some Native American, some indigenous person in my makeup. And then to cap it all off, to cap off this expositional onslaught, to quote a Team 4-Star video, I also have some African American in me. I have some Pan-African blood. So, like, the idea, and this is one of the things that used to get to me all the time, people would literally ask me, what are you? Which, first of all, how fucking rude is that as a question? But this is something that would be asked to me, by black people, by white people, Hispanics, like, literally just, like, the idea of, like, I'm looking at you, and I'm seeing a mesh of characteristics, and then they would basically ask me, what are you? So then when it comes down to that, it's like, okay, well, then I get to choose how I self-identify. Right, like, I choose to go ahead and give credence to all those things, but, like, there have definitely been times in my life where just for, expediency's sake, I'm a black guy. Because that is definitely a part of my makeup. And then, sometimes for certain discussions, like, as a person with some indigenous background, I usually don't, like, outwardly claim, like, that I'm a white person, even though that's a part of my genetic makeup. I mean, when it comes right down to it, if people were to look at me, they definitely would be like, So then usually I have to say, like, oh, well, I'm mixed. And that's just like a whole extra thing, right? So then it's like the whole idea of, like, if somebody is a man, someone's trans man, okay? Them having been born as a female is part of that makeup, right? That's why they're trans, they had to transition. But, like, for the purposes of the conversation that you're having with this person, they're a man. Whether or not they were originally female, whether or not they were assigned female at birth, has nothing to do with the conversation. It really doesn't, because, like, what does that have to do with what's going to move forward between you and this person? If it's about whether or not you want to fuck that person, really, that just shows your bigotry right there. That's no different than back in the day when people wouldn't get together with people because of, like, their genetic background. Sorry, I heard something. I wasn't sure what it was. Back to the debate.
The answer is that there is no answer. There are expectations and roles. A person who is half white and half black, or maybe a quarter black, 3/4 white because of skin tones and pigmentation and the one drop rule that people still adhere to for some reason.
We should not have racial expectations, though, just to clarify.
Oh, I agree. I don't think we should have sexual expectations
Do you
either.
think we should have gendered expectations?
I don't think we should have any kind of expectation for any of these things.
Would you define race based on the expectations of the races?
Well, yeah, we already do. white Latin people, for example, depending on how dark your skin tone is or whether or not you speak with an accent, there are plenty of Latin people and even like black people, descendants wise, who are white passing. Kamala Harris is what, half black, half Indian or something.
Yes.
Yeah, right, but she gets treated black. Obama gets treated black. But I grew up around Latin people who spoke Spanish with with a thick accent. They spoke English, but they were white, like skin tone wise, so they get treated white. But obviously, our definition
Yes.
of race
How are
isn't
you relating
exclusively
this to
limited
man? Just curious.
in the sense that all of it's complete bullshit. There are expectations we have for what it means to be this, that, the other. I really don't think we're doing anything other than a framework by which we're meant to be understood, even if that understanding is in service of rejecting everything associated with it. I think that a trans man can identify as a man and then reject everything about manhood and have fat titties. God
And
bless
that's
them.
a
God be willing.
contradiction from your reference. Because
No,
you
no,
said
not
you're
at all.
referring. It
It's
is
based.
100%.
It's based.
Like even just deductively, if we were to walk through this in a syllogistic format, it would result in a special pleading fallacy. Because you said a man is someone who identifies as a man. Then I was like, oh, well, what is a man? And then you were like somebody who identifies with these social characteristics that we associate with males.
No, only identifies with being man. The characteristics themselves
But you
don't have
did
to be
say that
identified
second
with.
part.
They identify with the broader group, the categorization, but not the individual characteristics. They could
That's what I
reject
said. The
everything about it.
social, like, yeah.
Oh,
if
the
it's
broad.
social,
Yes,
then
the broad thing.
it's not individual if it's social. But yeah, so they identify with the social traits that we associate with males, right? But I think it is false. It is notably false that just because you identify with them as a man, you identify with these social characteristics of a male.
Okay, let me give you an example here. Okay. So I consider myself an American. Now, let's say I had a time machine. I traveled back to 1804 in America, right? And I step out of the time machine. Okay, I step into, say, I don't know, some southern state. I have a backpack full of ammunition and weapons that won't be invented for 200 years, and I have a Judge Dredd rut of a time across the South. Okay, I'm imitating Sherman. I'm having a grand old time. I'm John Browning my way through the countryside, screaming about how I'm an American, this, that, the other. Now, in the time period that I'm in right there, and honest to God, in most of the South today, all the traits that I consider being American have nothing to do with what they understand as being American. Initially, the founding fathers were so racist, they thought that Germans were too swarthy for the Anglo characteristic of the colonies. So a characteristic, like a role, a trait, I'm an American, that's something that I ascribe to myself. But at the same time, I could exist in a context where I reject basically everything associated with that trait, with that role, for the same reason that there are women, even cisgender women, who have historically rejected everything about it. Joan of Arc, or I don't know, Mulan
And what makes
allegories
them
throughout
women?
history, because they identify as it.
Okay, so the problem with this circularity again, if I were to tell you a blarg is somebody who identifies as a blarg, can you tell me what that is?
I wouldn't. Why would I have to tell you what that is? You just told me.
So, okay, or if I were to say this on your screen right now, as far as I can see, there is a blarg. Can you point to it?
You made the term. How would I be able to point to it?
No, I defined it for you. I said a blarg is something that's a blarg.
Oh no.
Okay, so
So now can you
what here
point
is a
to it?
I
blarg?
did so good the first time I played with this mod.
Oh, I just defined it.
So again,
So, like, this whole thing right here, are you a blarg? I've been listening to this for just a moment here, trying to see where she was going with this. But the idea there is, if I made up a word, and you don't have any social context for that, then that's going to be a problem, right? Now, here's the difference. To some extent, as you get older, right, and as you start to explore the world of sexuality, right, there is going to come a point where you're going to have to start exploring what you like and what you don't like. I can only think of one reason why it would be problematic to have that exploration without having a strongly defined sense of what a man and a woman is. And the only reason why that would be is if you would find it harmful for somebody to potentially have to experiment with all of the things to figure out what they like the most. As again, things that I have in common with Vouch is I am a pansexual male. I'm a man who has sex with men, but also, like, trans people are on the table, you know, non-binary people are on the table. I don't really see your genitalia or what you were assigned at birth as a thing that should be relevant into whether or not I wish to have an emotional and or physical relationship with you. That works for me. And that is something that worked out over many, many years as an adult of me figuring out my sexuality. When I was a teenager and just starting to understand what sexuality was, I thought that, I felt that I was straight. As I got a little bit older and found that attraction was a wider spectrum than that, I, came out as bi. As I learned a little bit more about trans people, I realized that some of those people were absolutely amazing and quite attractive. And so I had to expand my definition there a little bit more. And there's nothing wrong with those experiences that I had. There's nothing that is inherently harmful. I didn't suffer because of these things that I went through. That's not how this whole rodeo runs. So that's like its whole own like topic there. But like if I didn't know what was man and what was woman, the only difference is I wouldn't have started from a position of I'm straight. That's like the only thing that really would have changed in that sexual journey. Because me being an open person, I definitely, over time, I feel it's highly likely that I would have ended up experiencing and, experimenting with all of these other things. And I probably still would have found things that I like and things. Well, I mean, because I have found certain things I don't like. It's not about whether a person is a certain genitalia, but like certain sex acts are not my thing. I have my preferences. And there's nothing wrong with any of that because I'm my own person and I get to make all of those decisions. And I don't see my ability to make those decisions as stopping anybody else from making their decisions. I don't see the actions that I'm taking as harmful to anybody else. I don't see why it should be any different if a person chooses to identify as male or female, as a man or a woman, because at the end of the day, that's really just how you want people to look at you. When I tell people, when I identify openly as a pansexual male, I do want people to understand that in that reference, it's not that I'm trying to sleep with everybody, but the idea is if it did happen to go that way, your gender wouldn't be a barrier to us having that sort of relationship. Right, like, and that's for a lot of conversation, for a lot of adult conversations that I would be having, because being also a poly person, oftentimes I'm actually in the dating world. It's super relevant for that information to be a thing. That being said, for example, I'm just a guy. If somebody wants to assume, right, if somebody just wanted to assume that I was straight, or somebody wanted to assume that I was monogamous, and it didn't come up in conversation, cool, their assumption is definitely a thing. It's not really important to me for that person to be able to identify me correctly on those levels. But if it was, and I chose to speak about those things, I wouldn't want someone being like, oh, you're not pansexual, you're just confused. Or you're not polyamorous, you just want to cheat. Like that's like screw you, first of all, because you have no idea about my intentions behind these things. You have no idea about my desires behind these things. You have nothing really nothing to stand on about your decisions about who I am. You can make your assumptions, and that's totally fine. And then if I correct your assumptions, you can maybe find something factual about it that you can choose to argue with. But at the end of the day, how I identify myself is a lot more important than how you identify me. Like, now, one of the things is over these two things, if somebody wants to try and discriminate against me because I have sex with men and trans people, I don't care. Fuck you. You're a fucking piece of shit. That's just my straight up thoughts on it. Like, you don't have to like that. If you don't like me because of what I do with other people that doesn't involve you, affect you, or have anything to do with you that you're not invited to, fucking suck it. I don't care. Same thing about me being poly. If you just want to be like, oh, well, you're a cheater, that's totally fine. And as far as I can tell, you are definitely not in my dating pool. So, hopefully we can still be friends. But like, I can see how somebody not accepting a trans person and in their choice of identification could be more emotionally or mentally damaging, and how in a lot of cases it could also lead to physical harm from external sources. So I don't understand the logic of I need to be able to say this because I feel this very strongly, and it's like, okay, and that is totally fine right up until the point where it affects somebody else's ability to say what they want to say. Like, if what they're saying isn't harmful to you, if by them saying they're a woman or a man, it doesn't make you any less of a woman or a man, then why would you use language that would make them less of what they identify as? That's just crazy to me. A trans man saying they're a man doesn't make a man It doesn't make a person who is assigned male at birth any less of a man. A trans woman saying she's a woman doesn't make someone who's assigned female at birth any less of a woman. But anybody saying that a trans man isn't a man and a trans woman isn't a woman is making the point that they do not feel that that person is that thing that they like. That it's QED, man. It's QED.
Oh, or is there a problem with circular definitions?
So what you just said was really dumb. A man is someone who identifies as a man. I'm a man. Now point to the man on your screen.
Okay, now that wasn't my question though. On your screen,
it's not that hard, right? Because I've done two things. I constructed a definition, and then I pointed to what a representation of that is.
Okay, so in order to create a definition, all you have to do is make it circular and then point to an example of it. But the problem with that is we don't know what it is.
You can literally do that. We create new words all the time doing exactly this. Oh, this is such a vibe. What's a vibe? This is a vibe. Oh, hey, I've now decided. Here's a new term, doubles. A double is like when it's like this. It's like these kind of things, you know, like this kind of stuff. Well, there you go. We do. This is language.
Oh yeah, man. Or like, hey, how about this, right? We have a word, adult, right? That's not a verb, but it's commonly used as a verb now because I've had, you know, my stepkids recently talk about how difficult it is transitioning into adulting, and I'm like, transitioning into being an adult, and they're like, yeah, adulting, right? Like, context matters, but like, it's not even just that. Like, communication is not just the direct and strong definitions of words. Having an agreement, right? Being in agreement about what words mean definitely helps conversation along. But she's trying to make the point that it's impossible to communicate if you don't know exactly how and why someone is using a term. And it's not impossible to communicate under those terms. It can be frustrating sometimes, but it's not impossible. And I have to deal with that every day when people misuse words or mispronounce words or fucking just speak in grammatically incorrect ways. I do it myself too. It's just how conversation works. What the fuck?
Language. We do this literally all the time. I'm not like, this sounds facetious, but like we do this constantly. New music genres are invented like this nonstop.
Hold on, yeah, but
words get codified.
If I were to say a blarg is somebody who identifies as a blarg, then I pointed at myself and James and I said we're both blargs. Can you tell me what it is now?
Why would I?
No, I couldn't, but I could probably assume a lot of things. Blarg could be European descended person. It could be a brunette. It could be a human being. It could be a sapient creature. It could be a YouTuber. Like, a Blarg could be any of those things. If you'd be like, you and James are Blarg, I'd be like, okay, cool. What do you guys have in common? And I agree with you on that one. But here's the whole thing, right? You just made up a category. It could be anything. It could be any of those things that I just mentioned. It could be all of those things specifically. That would take a little bit more explanation because I have no context at all for how that word is being used or how it is meant to describe those people. It wouldn't be so hard to be like, oh yeah, the man is a person who identifies as a man. Well, like what? Well, I identify as a man. Well, I guess I think something a little bit closer to the core of what she's trying to say is, okay, so then if the person's follow-up question is, am I a man? And then you were like, do you identify as one? I could see where there would be some confusion there. But then you could just bring out all of those, you know, all of those other explanations. You could be like, do you feel like this fits you more? You bring up all those archetypes. You know, like all the socially accepted, you know, archetypes of what a masculine person is supposed to be, and then be like, does that sound like something that you're interested in? Because I can't tell you how you identify. I can't tell you who you are. Even if you were coming to me seeking that elucidation, all I could do would be to help you figure that out. I can't define you. Right? Like, is that wrong? Is that crazy? I don't feel like it's crazy. I don't feel like it's crazy to say that you don't get to define someone else.
I need to know what it is. Someone who identifies.
Based on the information that I gave you, can you tell me what that word refers to?
You.
me and James.
What you're arguing.
Wait,
what?
what?
You're arguing,
Wait,
so
this is just
what
crazy.
you're arguing.
Wait, hold on. Because
Wait. You're
there's a
mixing two
difference
things up.
between an
You're mixing-
example
you're
and
mixing-
the actual referring of the word.
You're
Like,
mixing.
But okay, but here's the whole thing, right? He just answered her question, and she's acting like it's a gotcha. But he's like, yeah, based on the definition you gave me, that you and James are blargs. Then my answer to that would be, those guys, they're blargs. Just like giving an example. Like, as far as that goes, do I know what a blarg is? No, I still don't know what a blarg is. You haven't bothered to give any context. But for example, when someone says, I'm a man, you have context for what those social archetypes are. This isn't a reasonable example.
You're
be an
mixing two
example of a
things up.
triangle without
What-
it being the definition of a triangle.
What you're mad about is that this definition doesn't seem very useful. There's nothing wrong with what just happened. You said a blarg is when someone identifies as one. I identify as a blarg. I now know everything I need to. You're a blarg. That's it.
Thank you.
There's literally nothing wrong. There's no
Perfect.
problem with circularity. Language exists this way. This is normal. The question
Well, the
is
problem is
this
it's
definition
uninformative.
useful? Right. You're talking about utility. And hey, I agree. I'm a gender abolitionist. I don't give a shit about gender. So if we could just get rid of all of this and not bother with it, that would be phenomenal. But in the meantime, as long as we have a bunch of arbitrary associations around like what it means to be a man or a woman, a bunch of widely held expectations, mind you, about what it means to be a man or a woman, then people are going to have preferences for which group they want to associate
The
with.
problem-
There it is. There's that gender abolitionist thing. Okay, so like at the end of the day, I don't agree with the idea that we should just remove words because the concepts are too nebulous or ephemeral to lock down objectively. I don't think we should just get rid of what gender is. Because one, right, doesn't that kind of devalue the entire journey? You know, doesn't that kind of like trivialize what trans people have gone through in finding how they identify to then be like, oh yeah, by the way, that shit doesn't matter anymore. Like, if we're gonna abolish gender, hopefully we do that in like a long, drawn-out, protracted situation where people can kind of transition to a non-gendered sort of model of society, rather than making all trans people feel like they did all of that for nothing. So yeah, I don't feel like destroying concepts is going to help people. That being said, I am absolutely 100% all for the idea that if somebody tells me that they're a man, that I can believe them, that that is how they want to be treated. Somebody tells me that they're a woman, I can believe them that that's how they want to be treated. How I treat men and women, yo, that's really more of a thing on me. And like, you know, I could be a dick either way, but you know, I generally tend to treat people about the same. Like, I can't really think of a thing that I do differently or separately for men or women. I think, like, I don't personally punch women in the face, but I try not to, like, hit or hurt or be violent with people who I think are weaker than me anyway. So it's not really just a women thing, and there are definitely women who are stronger than me. And, look, it may not be chivalrous, people may get upset at this, but if a woman punches me in the face, and I feel like I'm actually in danger, like, it's probably going to be a fight, dude. I'm not saying I would beat a woman. I'm not saying I would beat anybody. I'd absolutely defend myself if I thought that I was in danger. You know what I'm saying? Like, that has nothing to do with someone being a man or a woman. And if somebody came at me with a knife, I don't care if you've got a penis or a vagina or how you're choosing to present, I'm going to disarm you. And we're going to have a discussion about it. Like, it's just going to go down like that. You're going to have a fight on your hands. That being said, right? Like, I don't see why anybody should really treat someone different because of whether they're a man or a woman. But there is that whole idea of, I want people to go ahead and start off with the understanding that this is how I look at the world. Right? This is the perspective from which I'm coming. And that way, when they're dealing with me, they will know kind of more how to deal with me. That's the entire reason. It's the only reason for descriptive words. It's for context. I mean, I can say context a billion times and never get to the point. I think I'm probably going to stop this when we get to about an hour into this debate, but we can come back tomorrow. It's mostly just been me and my wife here hanging out.
And as long as they want that, I'm fine with it.
Which I'm super cool with, by the way. I like hanging out with my wife, and I like talking about this stuff even if no one's listening. So, but I have been going for a little bit over 2 hours at this point. and probably a good idea to just go ahead and save the rest of this for tomorrow. So we're gonna get through this last 12 minutes, and then I'll pause it here, and we'll come back tomorrow. But I will give some of my thoughts afterwards on this. And again, I still gotta discuss my feelings about Sanvi, because I don't feel like she's. I feel like she's being disingenuous with how she's arguing this. But again, I just like it. She's not dumb. So I'm worried more about whether it's just like active dishonesty, or whether she's just been deeply indoctrinated into this sort of like deep negativity against people.
Arbitrary associations around like what it means to be a man or a woman, a bunch of widely held expectations, mind you, about what it means to be a man or a woman, then people are going to have preferences for which group they want to associate with. And as long as they want that, I'm fine with it.
Then. If the word has no meaning, then trans men aren't men. The same way I can't say a water bottle.
And you aren't a woman.
Wait, hold on. The same way I can't say that a water bottle is a blarg, because we don't really know what a blarg is. A blarg has no meaning.
You can say that.
So hold on. Wait. Then we would need to know what it means.
What you don't, no. Wait,
hold on. What property?
You don't you just said it.
Yes, we do. Because, for example, me, James, water bottle. These things are all blargs. What is the property that they have in common?
I don't know. Why? I don't care. Wait, why?
Okay, and that's the same problem with the definition of man.
Wait, no. Again, you're attacking utility. First of all, things that all belong to a group or to a term don't have to have a shared characteristic.
Uninformative has to refer to.
That's utility. You're describing
it's a fallacy. No.
No. It's not about. Don't misuse the term fallacy.
No, it is.
No. Please. No. Stop. Wait. Stop. Please. Wait. No. Listen. What you're just describing right now are useless terms. You're describing terms that don't provide meaning. They don't elucidate. They don't give you understanding. That's fine. There are lots of words like that.
That's what a contradiction is. Like,
no.
Can you wait? Hold on.
No. Please. No, you need to understand this. If you ever, because you're going to be showing this PowerPoint off to like 70 more people, and they're all going to tell you this, and you need to learn now. Okay? Language does not give you a right to utility. Usefulness, consistency, broadly shared terms between things within a same definition. Language guarantees none of these things. I don't know why. I don't know where this misunderstanding of linguistics came from. If you want, you can read like the big theorists and understand that they're basically throwing their arms up in the air going, we have no fucking clue how language works. None of this works this way. Like, you have to read Wittgenstein or something. The idea of like, well, it's a fallacy to have a term that refers to a thing when you don't know that. No, it's not. That's not what a
Like, Vosh is kind of pulling the intellectual card on her here now, and I don't know if that's necessarily the most good faith way to go about this, but like he's definitely pulling the just brought up Wittgenstein. I haven't read Wittgenstein. Get out of my fucking face, Vosh. Is that a real linguist? Is that a guy who actually exists, or did he just pull that out of his ass?
Fallacy means a fallacy.
Can I give you an example?
Wait, no. A fallacy is a logical contradiction. When you say a blarg is this, these are blargs, and leave it at that, you have not constructed a logical contradiction. You have actually created a perfectly consistent and self-contained bubble of information. It's just useless info.
Can I give you an example? So if we had a squared circle, can you envision a squared circle?
So again,
I can envision a squared circle. If you take a circle, right, and then you can either put the square around the outside of it or fit the square inside of it. A squared circle is simply, I mean, it's just like that. So when you think about it, if you draw a circle of a certain size and then you put the four corners of the square inside the circle, then you've got the boxing ring, the squared circle, right? For example, just putting it out there. A circle that has been squared. Okay, so there's no such thing as a square circle, but the squared circle is a circle that has been squared. And also, you could take a circle and you could square that. Doesn't that make a sphere? Do you have to cube it to make a sphere? I don't know. I'm not into geometry at this exact moment. I'm pretty good at math, but like I haven't read a textbook in going on 30 years. Come on, guys.
Square and circle have mutually exclusive. Well, first of all, you can round the edges.
It's a contradiction. Something can't be both square and both circle at the same time because it violates the logical law of non-contradiction.
She's just talking about whether or not those two things. Why do I keep losing all of that money? I just lost a ton of money. What the fuck just happened?
Hey, Smokey. Shanique asked me to get her dab tool, but I can't see over there.
Just tell her to use this one. Hey, do me a favor. Don't use people's real names. I'm live right now. But yeah, going back into her, like, yeah, it's okay. I was gonna say, like, this contradiction. She's trying to say one word can't be one thing and it's complete opposite, but man and woman are not opposite. That's a whole other conversation I'm gonna have to get into at some point. We're like 10 minutes from where I'm gonna cut it off here, so
Contradiction.
Well, that would
And
really
if I were
depend.
to tell somebody, envision a squared circle, they would always never be able to do it because it's a contradiction, right?
Hold on.
And that is what renders that uninformative. And
You're
that is why
incorrect.
we have the fallacy of
I have
non-contradiction.
okay. But first of all, wouldn't it be a fallacy of contradiction? Because a fallacy doesn't describe the rule that you should be following to not do the thing. The fallacy describes the thing that you did that was wrong. So it should be the fallacy of contradiction, not non-contradiction. That's okay. Also, I've never heard of that fallacy. That's not necessarily a fallacy. I mean, it's oxymoronic to describe something as two different things. But again, men and women are different, but not opposite. I should say it's oxymoronic to describe things as opposites. Like the diverse redundancy of this argument. It's oxymoronic, but also kind of like any debate. But like the idea is that men and women aren't opposites. They're not polar opposites. I mean, like, I guess. Well, I don't know. I guess you could say they're polar opposites as being on the, the complete discrete ends of a spectrum. But that spectrum does have a lot of overlap all the way across it. So, like, for example, intersex woman, or intersex person, I should say, is both man and woman, same time. A thing absolutely could do this. Oh god, hang on. Alex just sent me, I guess, a tweet from Elon. Unions were created during a time where people were getting their heads cut off and fired. They needed protection back then. Now, with social media, you can be your own voice. You don't need to pay someone who makes $250K a year to be your voice. I mean, okay, no, but social media allows you to talk to people about your issues. It doesn't allow you to make any change happen at the company that you work for. What the fuck does that even mean, Elon? First of all, whether or not they make $250K a year, generally when people make that much money and people are happy to pay it to them, right? Like, generally when people make that much money and people are happy to pay it to them, it's because there's some serious use, that they're put to. Like, that's a very useful profession that they're doing, right? The idea is they're making $250K a year. How? Where's that money coming from? Is that coming from people's union dues that they're paying so that these people will protect them vis-a-vis their corporation? Because, I mean, shit, okay, cool. If everyone in the company is paying union dues, and this guy gets a portion of those dues, okay, cool. That being said, though, the idea that social media is a replacement for unions is insanity, because union reps and the union as an organization does a lot more for you than tweeting. Plus, Elon Musk, is that you trying to essentially say that you're the new union? Because, no. All right, getting through.
I have Googled squared circle and found multiple definitions. It can refer to a boxing ring. You can have a circle enclosed
That's not
within
what
a
I'm
square,
referring
or a
to.
square
You could have
within.
asked for clarification.
Oh, well, that's interesting. It's almost like language is an
Can you
imperfect way of
envision-
referring to real world ideas, and your attempts to try to apply a kind of failed logical consistency onto these arbitrary social categories is kind of stupid and self-defeating. You can have a squared circle. I'm envisioning it now. You can't see my mind because, it's
Okay, you can
beautiful in
draw
here.
it, but can you envision a shape that has 4 equal 90-degree angle sides, square, and also simultaneously is a round plane with a 360-degree angle? Like, that is not possible because it.
No, it's not, but I can absolutely picture a woman with a penis or a man with a vagina. Like, that doesn't break my brain to think about.
It violates the law of non-contradiction.
They have mutually exclusive definitions.
Correct. They have mutually exclusive definitions. So if I were to tell somebody and gave them that background, envision a square circle, they'd never be able to do it. It's uninformative.
So what does
the
that
same
have
applies.
to do?
The same applies. Wait, hold on.
We're
The same
talking
would
about
apply to
language.
man. The same applies to man. If you say
How?
a man, somebody who identifies as a man, and I say, what's that? And if somebody who identifies as a man social stuff doesn't have to work, so identifies as a man, then it would be the same with the Blarg example I gave.
No, wait, hold on. You have no idea what you're talking about. Okay, so let me explain this to you. When we talk about a square and a circle having mutually contradictory definitions, the reason for that is because we are assuming that the definition for both those things adheres to the mathematical description of a square and a circle. Both of these terms have mathematical descriptions. If you were to twist those definitions, then you could create a squared circle with any set of categories, characteristics, or non-literal meanings. But again, we're referring to physical mathematical constructions. To try to ascribe the law of non-contradiction as applied in this case to social categories betrays, and just I'm not going to dust
Logic
around
is
it.
universally applied.
No. You don't understand.
Logic is not universally applied. What? No. Okay, so logic, right? Logic refers to a system of ordering thought. Right? The reason why there's fallacies and non-fallacious information has a lot to do with whether or not something is just lying. Like when someone says a fallacy, it means falsehood. That's what I'm pretty sure that fallacious thought is where falsity comes from. Like they're definitely connected words. As far as I'm concerned, I haven't looked that up. I probably should look that up. Actually, I have the technology with which to do so. I realize this. I'm sitting at a computer. Why am I not using Google, right? Fallacy etymology. From Latin, fallacia, deception, deceit, trick, or artifice. Abstract noun from phallax, genitive fallacious or phallacus, deceptive, from phalaer, deceive. So basically, yeah, it's lying. It's not even just falsehood. You know, it's deception, to trick somebody, to make shit up. That's what a fallacy is. So to call something a fallacy isn't just saying that it's wrong or bad logic, but instead to kind of point out that in a very real sense, you're going out of your way, you're intentionally falsifying things. Sorry, I've gotten really into like watching this last little bit here. I stopped playing the game here for a minute. It's gonna be why not? But yeah, so just the entire thing there, like the fallacy of non-contradiction, or the law of non-contradiction by which violating it makes you fallacious, basically is stating that it's an intentional falsehood meant to obscure or obfuscate, to make a situation, to give, basically to give them a no-brainer, that sort of thing where they, and I say no-brainer, and here we go, using things in wrong ways. No-brainer is in no brain's gonna figure this shit out. You know, like the idea of define a chair and how you can continuously attack it. The idea that we all have an idea of what a chair is, but to attack every single point of it is technically fallacious, because you can break down every definition of what it is. We all have a general idea of what it still is. And yet, for example, I can take a box, sit on it, and call it a damn chair. And at that moment, functionally, based on utility, it is a chair. It's definitely a thing.
Understand what a social category is. You were unable
Logic
to
is universally applied. It's applied to social categories. It's applied to science.
No, this is like 101 stuff. This is like an economist talking about like supply
and
demand.
I don't know, like the first thing I hear every time I take a philosophy class is that logic is universal.
No, stop. Logic is universal, but the logic of social constructs and concretely defined mathematical categories are different. This is the reason why nobody has a definition for what it means to be black. You can look if you want, by the way. There are philosophers, anthropologists, sociologists, and biologists who have all gotten on the case. There's no answer to it. We also don't have an answer for what it means exactly to be biologically male or female, because there are exceptions in intersex people where the gametes may be in an interstitial point where it's impossible to concretely determine this. In reality, outside of the abstract
Yeah, thank you for bringing that bit up. Like, yeah, again, all the same points are being made. Same stuff. Like, I agree with all of this. Like, I've made some of these arguments too, but like I said, I've watched some of his stuff, Trust me, it's not all original thought. A lot of these are things that I've thought for a long time, but like I kind of know where Vouch is coming from. I picked this one because it was easy. I was going to do a whole bunch of other videos.
Correct definitions
I didn't expect this to take this long.
of mathematics, everything and all logic is conditional to our circumstantial analysis of the situation. That's just how life is, especially with language where we make the words. None of this has anything to do with the definition of man.
Mutually contradictory concepts. So
no, I have not. You just haven't understood the concept.
A man is somebody who identifies as a man, and then a man is somebody who identifies with the social role we typically associate with males. These two don't have to be true at the same time.
Being a man is being the looking at the world and being viewed through a given framework associated with those roles and expectations.
Okay, but now you're changing it. Do you understand that? Because you had never talked about an internal perception.
I've said this about a dozen times, so I'm going to say it one more time. There are roles and expectations we associate with being a man. They change from culture to culture, time period to time period. That is what we think of as a man in a social sense. We have strong understandings of this, by the way. Short hair, lack of piercing, type of clothing, how you act, how you treat people. These are social things, not biological, but we believe them strongly nonetheless. And they're different here than they are in Saudi Arabia, India, and Russia, or all over the world. And when a person identifies as a man, or is told they're a man and just goes along with it, as many people do, most people are cisgender, that's because they choose to, or simply are, engaging with that perspective. Imagine it as like, I'm trying to like boil this down to the most like Reddit brain thing that I can, like a class in an RPG or something, right? A class in an open-ended RPG. We're playing that one game that's Diablo but not. What is it called? Path of Exile, okay? Everyone gets the same skill tree, okay? Anyone can build into anything, all right? However, you're choosing to engage with the world from the framework of the class that you got into from the get-go. There are
Okay, no, I see, and I like that because okay. We play a lot of Pathfinder around here. A lot of the people in the house have gotten down with it, and so there's definitely one thing, cross-classing. You know, whether you do just multi-class from the beginning or you do a prestige class or whatever it is definitely a thing. So I can start off with some, some rogue points, but end up, speccing into cleric if I feel like it. And if I chose to spec hard enough into cleric, I could end up spending most of my time doing healing from the shadows, right? Why couldn't I? But then there is also just that entire idea of just choosing to play, say, like a fighter, but being a really, really nice and sweet guy and really gentle and not actually liking to fight. Like you can play the game any way you want to. Just because of how you chose, or just because of how you started, doesn't mean you are tied into that. And if storytelling games have taught me one thing, it's that you write your own tale. Like no one gets to write it for you. Your DM will try so hard to guide you and direct you and make things turn out because your DM essentially wrote a story that you're, dealing within the framework of. But inside that framework, you can do whatever you fucking want to. And unlike in real life, when you're starting out, a Pathfinder campaign, you get to pick everything about your character. You get to pick whether they're male or female. You get to pick how they are dressed. You get to do all of those things. And there's no reason that anyone should look at that as not basically how life can work if we just let it. Like, no, I can't simply just, like, go out and, punch a bunch of rats and then now I know how to shoot 3 arrows at the same time. That's unrealistic, of course. But it's not unrealistic to say that Pathfinder can teach us a little bit about making sure to treat people how they want to be treated. Because when I'm sitting down at the table with my friends and we're playing the game, if one of my friends is playing a female character, I'm not treating them like a dude who's pretending to be a female. I'm in that shit. And I get that that's a role-playing game, but, like, why can't you just do that normally for somebody? If they want to be seen a certain way, and, for example, they're not hurting anybody by doing so, why can't you let them be seen that way? If someone doesn't know a whole lot about anime, but they really, really like anime, and, they're going into learning out about anime, why can't you go ahead and call them an otaku? Maybe they're not old school, all right? They don't fucking have to be. At the end of the day, those weebs are doing the best they can. If somebody is in med school, right, I wouldn't call them a doctor. But, like, they're definitely a medical person, They're a medical professional in training. If they never become a doctor, cool, they never become a doctor. But, like, it's not the same as, like, it's like identifying as something isn't the same as claiming you have abilities you don't have. When someone says, I'm a man, they're not saying I can get you pregnant. And again, if that's the only way that you're really basing that, that's really fucking weird. We're like 4.5 minutes, guys. 4.5 minutes and more of this, and then we'll pause.
Sets and frameworks and decisions, like being an American, right? Like, I'm an American, but what does that mean? I don't know. Nobody knows what it means to be an American in a social sense, but that doesn't mean that it's useless to think of people as Americans, because people might have different meanings, different understandings. And that's why this isn't useless. We do have preconceptions of what it means to be a man. Different ones, contradictory ones, but they still exist. And when a person says, I
Do you think
identify
we
as a
should
man,
adopt contradictions? Logic, if we can, agree it's a logical contradiction, do you think it can be a
no,
contradiction?
it's
and
not a
be true?
logical
Yeah,
contradiction.
he didn't
It
You
say
is
it
just
was a
a
said
logical
contradiction. How
no,
is
no, okay, no, see, this is your problem. You're trying to apply a 101 understanding of logic. This is a contradiction in definition, which is not a logical
which is a
contradiction.
reference. Okay,
No,
hold
no,
on,
no,
hold on. Let
no,
me give
no,
you,
no,
let
no,
me
no,
give you an
no, wait,
example.
wait. Are you,
Hold on,
are
I
you
let you
aware?
tell. Let me give you
Wait,
an
no,
example.
no, no, stop. Are you aware of the fact that different cultures have contradictory definitions of what it means to be a man in terms of like socially, like, are you a man? Like that kind of thing.
People refer to different things, but when I'm saying, for example, I will say, when I refer to a triangle, I'm referring to a
We're
three-sided.
talking about social constructs, not distinct mathematical abstract
What
concepts.
what is a social construct?
I really wish you would have Googled that before talking to me.
I really think I understand how most people use the term, but I want clarification because, as far as I'm concerned, under your framework, every single word is socially constructed, is it not?
Yes.
Perfect.
Literally
Now
every
let me continue. Did we not invent the word
concepts-
triangle?
No. The concept of a triangle is not socially constructed. The term we've created for it
Perfect.
is.
The concept of a man is not socially constructed. The term is. Now define what that concept is.
No, incorrect. That's what a social construct is. A triangle is not a social construct. Our understanding of it is, and certainly the word for it. A man is a social construct, and the word we've constructed for it is as well. That's
I mean, yes, no, I can kind of get that. And see, like, but he is kind of drawing a fine point here, and this is something I think can be argued against really well, is the idea of the concept of a man is not necessarily a social construct, but the concept of maleness, of masculinity, absolutely is. The concept of a man is one of those things. Like the idea of a man, the idea of the people who portray those masculine traits more regularly is a social construct. But like, XX chromosomes and XY chromosomes are not something that we decided upon. That is the way that things are to an extent. That has nothing to do with being a man or a woman, though. That's like solely the realm of reproduction. That is the only place where that matters. And reproduction, okay, cool. Pretty important to the continuation of life, but when it comes to society, reproduction is not the most important thing that we have out there. It's just, the whole thing here is her entire argument is based on reproductive ability. And the weird thing about it is that, I mean, the argument probably comes up later in this. Vaush is known to be bringing this one up, but like, what about women who've had a hysterectomy, or sterile men or women, or men who've been chemically castrated, men who've been physically castrated? Like, what about those people? Are they still men or women because they can't reproduce? Because that seems like a cruel distinction to make. To say that you, without your gametes or your reproductive organs, are not how you identify, that's crazy. And that, to me, is the reason, that's the crux at the end of this, is the only argument that really works for the other side is when it comes down to reproductive ability. But since that is incredibly exclusionary of a pretty reasonable percentage of the population, that's a shitty way to put it. I'm just saying.
That's the difference between a social construct.
So you didn't answer what a social construct was in the way you're using it.
No, but you don't even know what they are. Listen, a triangle, the concept, the mathematical concept of a three-sided, three-angled polygon or whatever, not a polygon, a shape. That is it is an abstract thing that exists in the ether that we pluck from the universe and we give a word to. the word triangle has not always had the same definition and doesn't currently. There are multiple social definitions for the word triangle that don't actually refer to a mathematical property. You could, like, there are words for triangle that are direct translations from other languages that refer to like a ménage à trois or like a three-way or something like that.
What is
These
the distinction again? Like, what's the social construct that man can't be something that's identified within reality?
A social construct is a concept that we have defined socially, but is not emergent from the universe. It is something that we have built. It is something that understandings of is shifted because they are a product of our mind and our perception. Everything, well, not everything, but most everything we deal with on a day-to-day basis is to some extent a social construct. And the question is, to what extent do we is empirical engagement like valuable here? We used to think empirical engagement was very valuable when it came to race. This was the like phrenology skull measuring whole business, right? Well, we know that race exists in a social construct, but social constructs aren't necessarily completely detached from, say, innate mathematical properties. So let's analyze these skull shapes. Scientific racism had a good heyday for about 150 years, but at the end of it now, with our current understanding, it seems like race was, yeah, pretty much just a social construct. It wasn't actually tied that much to a mathematical understanding of what it means to be white or black.
Okay, so when you say a social construct, if I understood correctly, it's a concept that we define socially that is not emergent from the universe.
Yeah, like we don't pluck the definition or the understanding of this thing from some kind of abstract.
So then this gets into this problem. Do you think that men and women existed before Homo sapiens developed complex language?
The social construct of what it means to be a man or a woman in a gendered sense? No, of course not.
So there were no men and women prior to the Western linguistic development?
Wait, but before the word man and woman?
Yeah. Were there men and women before the word man and woman?
Yeah, there have been analogous terms to those in previous languages.
Okay,
and
so then it seems that they are emergent still from reality.
No, that's not. Wait, no, that's not emergent from the universe. That's different languages giving different terms to the same fundamental like part of.
What
human
does
existence.
emergent from? Are humans not emergent from the universe?
Oh, oh God, no. Do you
No?
understand the difference between a triangle, something that you can arrive at from first principles, and what it means to be a man, something that you arrive at through observation and explanation?
I think all concepts are that which exist within reality and the
Okay, so
universe. So
what
can you
you're
define?
engaging in.
Wait,
Okay,
hold on.
so
How is
wait,
a man? How is a human man not emergent from the universe?
So what you're doing here is called scientific positivism. That's something you should write down to look up in the future. There was a philosophical movement about 200 or so years ago that's mostly died down, that was under the impression that the laws and principles of scientific analysis were capable of solving all human problems because everything we are and everything we do adheres ultimately to scientific principles. They were wrong. They were actually deeply racist lunatics who believed that all of their pre-existing social biases were just them understanding the material thread of reality. In reality, most social stuff is done through social work. Sociology, anthropology, history, interpretation, analysis, economics, political theory. The idea that, say, for example, communism is plucked from the threads of the universe.
All right, I gotta stop it there because that's gonna get into a whole other thing. All right, so giving my thoughts like right now, when we're about a third of the way through this, Vouch is doing a pretty good job, but it kind of seems like, and I guess this was like really recent. I was looking for something that was a little bit closer to when was this? 13 days ago. So this is like less than 2 weeks ago. So I feel like he's just like he's getting tired. He's been making the same arguments for a really, really long time. And maybe he's just getting a little bit over it, at this point. He's just like, okay, guess what, guys? I'm not necessarily the best person for you to talk to about this because I'm not going to give you any patience or any of my time or any real regard. But like, she definitely deserves the conversation at the very least. Like, I feel like there's a lot going on here with her, but her arguments aren't just completely insane. They're just very insistent. And of course, fighting with Vouch about things, you're not always going to get the chance to really make your points known. Which, I mean, like, again, that's unfortunately, that's just kind of how debate works. Um, but like I can see how that is definitely like frustrating for people to a large extent when they have to like try and get there. I kind of agree with the statement I said earlier, kind of mockingly from Vouch's supposed perspective that, he might not be the best person to talk to her. I mean, like, honestly, it just, she's so entrenched in it, and he's already coming from the point of view that it should be so QED, that it should already just make a lot of sense. And I can't really say that I can't say that I feel like he's wrong. Like it should be pretty easy to understand that you're not just gonna get away with like being stubborn about whether or not being stubborn about whether or not it's gonna be a good thing. Coin on a string. Oh, I want that. That sounds cool. Um, but yeah, I like at some point I would almost like kind of like to talk to this chick and see if I can make her budge at all on these points, because like she's not unintelligent. I can't get over the fact that she's not a dumbass. She just can't get over the idea of her offense at people pretending in her eyes to be something that they're not. And it just bugs me because like it's not even like that, man. But yeah, guys, I've been on here for almost 2.5, well, over 2.5 hours now. Jesus, it took me 30 minutes. It took me 30 minutes to get through the last fucking 10 minutes of that. So this is going to be potentially a format that I do on here. Depends on whether or not I get in trouble for playing other people's videos here on YouTube, and it's just going to have to do with that. But we're going to see if it works out. I can sit here, play Luck Be a Landlord or something else a little bit idle. I can't play anything that's like too intense because I have so many thoughts about all the things that these people are saying, especially when it's like two people talking. I mean, I'll probably get better with that over time. I've been doing streaming for a long time, but it's a lot easier to talk about what's going on since I don't have people in my chat very often. That's usually what I end up doing, just talking about what's on screen and stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I think I'd like to do this a little bit more. I might come back here in a little bit. I want to go check on the house and how everything's going for everybody up there. But the Smoke Dragon is coming over today, and I did want to talk with him about certain things. We might do like a little short preview of us going through some video that we're going to write a script on, or we might just find something random to talk about. But if so, it'll probably be here on YouTube. And yeah, I will see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.